Couples in beautiful costumes are dancing at the ball. The eyes of everyone present are drawn to a man and a girl dancing in the center of the room. It is the Emperor of Coronation, Carloy Croitan, who has just given a dance to one of the ladies. The guests discuss among themselves that even today the Empress does not dance with His Majesty. At such an incredible reception, they might as well pretend to be a good couple. An angry man, the Empress's father, Hans Delois, approaches the king. His daughter, who is sitting on the throne, is calmed by the ladies of the court. They are convinced that His Majesty is only dancing with other women out of politeness. However, Yvonne Delois looks as if she doesn't care about what is happening. On that day, exactly 1 year ago, the Emperor and Empress of Coronation were united in marriage. Carloy, holding a glass, wants to make an announcement. A year has passed unnoticed since his wedding to the Empress, but she has not yet given birth to an heir. This is a rather serious problem. Count Delois wants to interrupt Carloy, but he continues. With such cold marital relations, the Emperor thinks that certain changes should be introduced on the day of the wedding anniversary. The man hopes that they will affect the general atmosphere as well. At this moment, the Duke of Rodin's daughter, Lady Rodin, named Kiana, arrives at the palace. The Empress is distracted from her thoughts and notices the new guest. She immediately flies to His Majesty and says that she is ashamed of such statements. The distinguished gentlemen begin to ask Carloy what is happening now. Today, His Majesty has decided to appoint Lady Kianu as the second Empress. One of those present thinks this is impossible. The status of the second Empress disappeared 200 years ago. You cannot suddenly appoint someone to this role. Having stabbed the dessert on his fork, Carloy announces that this decision is not subject to appeal. The lady has revealed her treasure to him, so the man cannot avoid responsibility. The Duke of Delois is furious and shouts at His Majesty. The guests want to ask the Empress's opinion, but His Majesty is convinced that his wife does not mind at all, because it is all for the sake of the offspring. Yvonne, looking blank, agrees with her lord. The audience begins to whisper among themselves, not understanding the Empress's reaction. Clenching his teeth, Carloy thinks that everything is as usual. The man hopes that the Duke will personally handle the procedure for Kiana's accession to the position of the second Empress. At this point, His Majesty excuses himself, citing business, and takes his new wife with him. Delois holds his head in pain from what he has heard. The ladies of the court ask Her Majesty what to do. She orders them to carry out her husband's orders. Exactly 1 year after their wedding, the Emperor brought a new woman and made her the new Empress. Leaving the hall, Carloy smiles and looks sideways at Yvonne. A year ago, the Emperor's wedding took place. Standing in front of the altar, the father asks his daughter how she is, and the girl replies that she is fine. Hugging Yvonne, the man says that he loves her incredibly. Looking at this, the Emperor thinks the situation is ridiculous, because it is obvious that Yvonne is being forced into marriage. Sending a girl into a trap without even giving her a choice is disgusting. Count Delois says that he knows that His Majesty has a bad opinion of him. However, his daughter is just a child who does not understand anything. So the man asks Carloy to be kind to her. The Emperor asks him not to make him laugh. If the Count cares so much about Yvonne, he should have married her off to another man. It is clear as day that the man will never be able to feel even a little sympathy for Hans Delois' daughter. The Count sacrificed his daughter for the sake of power, knowing full well how he felt. Smiling, Hans says that he can't help it, because his Yvonne is the most beautiful woman in the whole empire. Therefore, only she is worthy of taking a seat next to the Emperor. Carloy is convinced that Delois is doing everything to become a member of the imperial family. This is not the first attempt of this cunning snake. The man needs power and jewelry. In pursuit of his goal, Hans has killed half of the Lord's family, but he managed to survive. The time has come to make an alliance, and the Count gives the hand of his daughter Carla. The Emperor says with contempt that he did not expect to meet Yvonne even on their wedding day. The girl was said to be very weak, so her father carried her in his arms whenever she was ill. Hans asked him not to bring servants from the palace, as he had brought his own maids with him. Carloy has to admit that his wife is really beautiful. She has the blood of the Delois family. Especially with her eyes, the girl looks very much like her father. However, Yvonne does not react, and her husband wonders why she only bats her eyelids. Perhaps the heroine is waiting for the emperor to shower her with promises of passionate love like a boy. It even sounds funny. Carloy doesn't understand why Delois is marrying a man who will never love her. She's been treated like a princess since she was a little girl. Yvonne seems to be as arrogant as her father. Looking at her future husband, the woman lightly agrees. The guests begin to whisper, and Carloy does not take his eyes off the heroine's eyes. They remind the emperor of the count and how he kept him in a dark basement. Out of anger, the lord tears off his hand. This marriage does not bother the man, so after the ceremony, Carloy leaves Yvonne. Turning around, the emperor announces that he is heartbroken at the thought of marrying her. Everyone present is shocked by His Majesty's behavior. The count is outraged by such disrespect from his future son-in-law. The daughter stops her father, who was about to go to the emperor, and says that she will speak to the man herself. One of the guests decides that the apple does not fall far from the tree, because as soon as the heroine appeared here, she immediately wanted to influence the emperor. Carloy's servant reports to him about the empress's words immediately after the celebration. The man is incredibly outraged by his wife's behavior, so the lord visits Yvonne's chambers. The girl begins to deny what she said at the wedding. The emperor asks her if she knows about his attitude towards the Duke of Del Osimo. He hates Hans to such an extent that, if he had his way, he would exterminate all the people in the empire who bear the name of Delois. The empress wonders if the lord could get rid of her entire family if he wanted to. Yvonne advises them to play it safe and have a child, because then the father will not meddle in their affairs. In public, they need to show a couple in love, even if they are not planning any descendants yet. It is time for the emperor to realize that the heroine does not claim a place in his heart and is not stupid enough to crave his love. The woman only wants Carlos to live peacefully and happily. The man says that she should also realize that he is not her father. If she makes a mistake, she could lose her head. Yvonne could become empress, but then the country would be finished. The next day, the servants say that the emperor has removed the empress from all state affairs. This means that their relationship is getting worse every day. The heroine, who is walking down the corridor at this time, hears everything, but remains silent. Yvonne is having breakfast with Carloy. The husband hopes that his wife will refrain from meeting the Duke and gets a positive answer. She should also not invite him to the palace. The heroine doesn't have time to listen as she already agrees with her husband, which irritates him. The emperor is tired of Hans constantly meddling in their affairs. He even has to tell him how many times he has lunch with his wife. The empress does not think her father is that interested. The lord angrily disagrees, because the duke is clearly watching them. Yvonne explains that this makes absolutely no sense. After all, everyone in the palace knows that the emperor hates her. The empress invites Carla to spend the night in her chambers tonight to get rid of unnecessary gossip. The man asks if it was her father who gave her this advice. The girl says that Hans Delois is just very worried about them. The lord is sure that Ivan knows that he does not care about this concern. He orders his wife to just keep her head down and not make things worse. The servants look at each other when they hear this. The empress does not understand what she has to do to get the emperor to come to her palace. Getting up from the table, Carloy says that there is one option. He will come only when Yvonne disappears from this place. That's how the relationship between the married couple only became colder. On the first day after their anniversary, the servants were already discussing the emperor's behavior because he was scheduled to have lunch with his wife today. The husband brought Kiana to it. He decided that the empress would not mind having lunch with them. In the future, Kiana will be in charge of the empress's affairs, so they should become friends. However, Yvonne remains silent. Carloy asks if the duke taught her manners, because when meeting the empress, one must at least feign favor. The heroine did not want to upset her husband, but Lady Rodin is not yet empress. He gave the order to transfer her duties, and this is being done, but only one day has passed. Besides, restoring the ancient title will take some time. Yvonne realizes that Lady Rodin wants to get the title as soon as possible. But excessive haste can only harm His Majesty. She and the Emperor were going to have lunch, so she invites Keanu to join them. Lady Rodin bows and apologizes for forgetting to introduce herself in person. The Emperor tells the Empress that he is completely immersed in love, but she should not blame him for it. Sitting the second empress down on a chair, the man explains that the Duke did not arrange a single meeting to confront them with the fact that they would have to share their lives together. Ivan was something like a pig in a poke for him, so the heroine has to understand him. Besides, Kiana will soon take up her duties, and His Majesty would be happy if his wife did not interfere with this. Delois says that she must have at least some responsibilities. Carlois thinks that she doesn't decide anything here, so it's a waste of time. Looking at the situation, Kiana notes that she just wanted to talk to His Majesty about work. Probably the current Empress is the best at handing over responsibilities. They say that His Majesty is very intelligent, and Lady Roden, taking the Emperor's hand, hints that he can speed up the process. Everyone will be glad to see a real Empress as soon as possible. At these words, a knife falls from Ivan's hand. A servant runs up to Her Majesty and asks if she is hurt. Carloy follows his first wife's gaze and notices that she is looking at his hand. He does not understand why Delois gives him such a blank, cold look. The man begins to have a headache and confirms Kiana's words. Rising from the table, the Emperor notes that it is time for them to leave, and the Empress must do everything quickly. After wishing Her Majesty a good day, the couple leaves. Yvonne tells her servant that she seems to be in trouble. The woman does not know how to be an empress because she came to the palace through her father's influence and has not been taught anything. She doesn't even know what to do in a situation like this. Sitting in her chambers, Carloy talks to Kiana and asks her what she has arranged in the hall. The woman explains that the fact that she took his hand does not mean anything, and she is free to do whatever she wants, because they have a contract. This is not what the Emperor meant at all. He wanted to know why the second Empress entrusted all her work to Yvonne. This is illogical, because she would deliberately delay the process. Lady Rodin just wanted to see Delois' reaction to this request. She does not understand why the Lord is so angry. He himself invited her to share a table with the Empress, and so quickly that she didn't even have time to get dressed. Carloy points out that her role is to keep the Empress in a cage, and the woman is doing too much. Jumping up, Kiana asks if this is the only reason she is needed. Is it really just to make the Empress jealous? His Majesty is convinced that this woman does not know how to be jealous. You can stab her with a knife, but she will not bleed. Lady Rodin objects, because judging by the conversation, she is not at all devoid of feelings. Perhaps the Emperor should have let her get a little closer to him and not been so cold. The man asks her not to say anything stupid, because even a stone has more emotions. This woman from the Delois family will never be on his side. Kiana saw her hands shaking. For the Emperor, this is just a sign that Yvonne was raised as a princess and is not used to the rude treatment she has encountered today. Hatred for Carloy is in her blood. No Delois would blink an eye if the Emperor died in their arms. Kiana does not understand why her husband says he hates the Empress. The Lord decides to change the subject and asks if Lady Rodin has spoken to her father. Waving his hand away, Kiana informs him that he has already done some research. However, as for the witnesses to His Majesty's abduction, they are all long dead. Even the village where the kidnapped children were kept is now a ruin. Not a single resident survived. Looking for witnesses in the field is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Carloy will not stop there and orders them to look for someone who might know about the abduction. Sitting on the bed, Kiana says that she doesn't see the point and asks who the Emperor is looking for. The man excuses himself by saying that he only wants to find evidence against the Duke. For Lady Rodin, this is just a well-known lie. However, she does not care what Carloy is looking for. A few days later, in the Imperial Palace, His Majesty is standing at the window. Count Delois and his servant are passing by. The Emperor says that the old man now walks around the palace as if it were his own home. The butler reports that Hans is angry with the man. He keeps telling him how shamefully he treated his daughter. And for some reason, in his presence, any work on the appointment of the second Empress slows down. This gives Carloy a headache. He orders to send quick people to his wife to remind her of his instructions. The Emperor has already regretted entrusting her with much of the work. Gorton will try to convey this gently, but Her Majesty may get upset and tell the Duke. Shouting, the Lord forbids talking about Hans in his office. The butler apologizes and swears that this will never happen again. When he looks at Delois, Carloy's mind recalls how he was kidnapped, but the little boy was able to escape. Goran spoke to the Empress, and she said she would keep her husband's words in mind. 2 Sundays have passed since the Emperor last saw her, so the question arises whether the woman is working at all. Getting up, Carloy says that she will meet with the Empress right now. The butler asks him to stop, because he needs to warn her first, but the Lord does not pay attention to his words. The servants are shocked by the appearance of His Majesty in the female part of the palace. The Emperor notices that everyone is alert and asks where his wife is. The head maid wants to stop her husband from entering the chambers, but she is blocked by the butler. Once inside, Carloy steps on broken glass. Looking around, he notices the devastation in the chambers. Everything is broken or overturned. Ivan shouts at Marion not to light the lights. The Emperor asks her what is going on and orders her not to take him for a fool. The maid can't say anything, so the man decides to take care of everything himself. Ivan sits on the bed, holding her head with her bloody hands, and calls out to the maid. When she sees the Emperor, she calms down and stops screaming. Carloy notices the blood on her hand and immediately brings it closer. The girl pulls out her hand and holds it close. She wonders why the man didn't announce his visit earlier. The Lord says that she reacts as if she has touched a bug. He asks if his wife always behaves like this, because now her room looks like a dump. Ivan was not even ashamed when her husband found her in this state. The Emperor is here because there has been no news of the appointment of the second Empress for a long time. He asked Delois to hurry up, but she hadn't prepared anything. Perhaps the woman is not up to the job. Carloy realizes that the Duke is stalling, but the date and place of the ceremony must be set as soon as possible. The servants, watching this performance, laugh at how businesslike their lord is. The Emperor orders them to stop playing and fulfill all their orders. Getting out of bed, Ivan calls her husband cruel. He treats her as an emotionless thief who can only hide behind her father's back. He forgets that she is the only daughter of a duke with enormous influence. If Carloy thinks that his wife can't do anything, it's not even close. If she wants to, she can cancel the ceremony altogether or kick Lady Rodin out of the palace for no reason. She can even manage state affairs, leaving the Emperor around for show, but she doesn't need to. Ivan screams that she tried to live like a dead rat. She tried not to interfere in Carloy's life and just live without leaving the palace for the sake of his conscience, but he still hates her. The Emperor, laughing, says that his wife is not at all like a duke. The man is frankly grateful to her, but for his own good, she can do one more thing. She can disappear and never appear before his eyes again. Carloy sees that the woman has nothing more to say. The father can be understood in his unwillingness to allow his daughter to have a competitor, but it was his own greed that made him put down roots in the palace. Therefore, the Emperor does not need anything from his wife. He orders her to organize the ceremony, because he does not want to stay in this room for a minute. Leaving the chambers, the husband orders to punish all the Empress's servants so that there will be no more such disorder. Mariel asks for her forgiveness. Carloy asks how often this happens. The maid replies that it is rare. Her husband sends her to his wife's room. Ivan has cut her hand badly, and Mariel knows nothing and walks around, even though the maids are supposed to take care of her. The woman apologizes and quickly runs to the Empress. A few days later, in the Emperor's office, the husband is looking at the information about the announcement of the second Empress, which was brought to him from his wife. The butler remarks that the work is well done, but his master is still unhappy about something. The man angrily notices that the coronation date is set for the day of the Duchess of Delois' death, which she could not forget. The Emperor tries to understand what his wife is up to, but no idea comes to mind. Carloy is sitting in the council chamber. He missed the Duke's words and asked him to repeat them. It was about the Empress. If in their country they can do this to their wives, then their state will soon perish. The man was amused by these words. If this happens because of the appearance of the second Empress, he does not mind. Hans Delois explodes because for 200 years there had been only one Empress next to the Emperor. He wonders what His Majesty will do if people rebel. In addition, gossip is already spreading in the capital that Lady Rodin will soon be in charge of all affairs in the chamber with the Empress alive. Carloy says that the Duke himself asked him not to disturb his weak daughter. Ivan understands the reason perfectly well, so she does not dare to say a word against his actions. The man assumes that her selflessness was only a deception, but the Duke quickly denies it. The emperor realizes that only an official wife should handle the duties of the empress, so he gradually begins to trust her to do the hard work. However, Carloya is very worried that her delicate body may not be able to withstand a lot of work. They are very lucky that Kiana agreed to lighten the empress's burden. The women can share the duties, so the lord will be calm about his wife's health. In addition, Yvonne was entrusted with the preparation for the coronation, and she did a good job. The duke jumps up and says that he would rather believe that his daughter has gone mad. Only after losing him would a person schedule a celebration for the day of his mother's death. A few years ago, on this very day, the emperor did not hesitate to search his house. The man should be ashamed of himself for humiliating Hans in this way. At these words, Carloy flies into anger. It seems to him that the years have not spared the count or his mind. Is it really so hard for everyone to understand that the emperor does not care about the anniversary of the death of Delois' wife? They should stop this circus. The duke is furious at the injustice, but His Majesty no longer wants to listen to Hans. He gets up from the table and announces that the meeting is over. After wishing him a good day, the man leaves the room, followed by the butler. The servant does not want to leave his master alone. Carloy thinks that the blood of the dead people at the hands of Delois would be enough for a whole river. Therefore, there is nothing special about the death of his wife. She died as a result of her own intrigues. Horton suggests that the empress could have specifically chosen this date to give the duke another reason to oppose the emperor. This seems logical to His Majesty, since he knows nothing about his wife. The woman could have taken revenge for that conversation in the room. After all, she is Hans's daughter. The maid reports that Lady Rodin is asking for an audience. This surprises the emperor, and he asks to put the girl in the garden. The man would not want anyone to see them together. Taking Gorton with her, Carloy goes to the courtyard. It is raining heavily, and they say that it has flooded many houses. His Majesty approaches the garden and stops abruptly. The butler notices this and asks what happened. The emperor looks at the empress, who is catching wet drops with her hands. The man immediately asks what she is doing here, because he did not give her permission to visit this garden. Gorton awkwardly explains that she does not know. Recently, Carloy has rarely been here, so it is not guarded as much. The empress came with her maids, so they must have opened the door. The man decides that it's enough to make assumptions, because he can ask directly, and heads to his wife. Marielle wants to pay homage to His Majesty, but the lord ignores her. He rudely approaches Yvonne and asks her what she is doing in his garden. The woman averts her gaze and tells him that she was just taking a walk. This seems strange to Carla, because the weather is not conducive to walking. It is strictly forbidden to enter this part of the palace without his permission, but the empress did not know this. His Majesty says with contempt that no one could have told her. The empress's servants did not bother to find out the rules of this estate. Marielle justifies that no one stopped them on the way here. They came here without asking anyone, and if they had, they would never have done it. The emperor decides that they are not to blame. He orders Gorton to redirect the people who work here to other places, because they are clearly not doing their job. Yvonne proves that it is her fault. It is not worth punishing those who are not involved. Carloy explains that an unknown guest entered the closed garden, and he must make sure that this never happens again. The man also mentions the date of the ceremony, and asks if his wife specifically chose that day because it is the anniversary of her mother's death. Yvonne looks dumbfounded by these words. The emperor says that the duke accused him of having specifically scheduled the celebration on such a day. He asks the empress to stop pretending to be stupid. That's all his palace and his garden are. She should calm down if she wants to keep her title in the future. So, the preparations for the ceremony leave Delois with plenty of time to walk around. The woman could go a day without appearing in front of His Majesty. Suddenly, thunder strikes behind him, and a branch of one of the trees breaks. The lord looks up and sees it, but it's too late. He doesn't even have time to instinctively jump away. Yvonne rushes forward and knocks the man down to save him. The emperor and empress lie together on the floor, in this position, and Kiana, who has already arrived in the garden, finds them. Delois immediately gets up and apologizes to Carloy, as she did it rashly. The girl awkwardly explains that she thought something was falling on the emperor, so the body threw itself. The man points out that the branch was not falling on him and that he should not have done so. Clutching the bottom of her dress in her fists, Yvonne says she didn't have time to think. If it were anyone else in the Emperor's place, she would have done the same. Carloy hopes that Delois was not hurt. Next time she shouldn't do something like that, and that's the end of their conversation. The Empress agrees and walks past her husband. He observes how Yvonne will behave in front of Kiana, who is already bent down in a respectful greeting. He says that he called Lady Roden himself. The blonde doesn't care what he says, so she just walks away. Kiana notices that Carloy's ears are red, but he blames it on hitting the ground when he fell. The couple goes inside, as the rain is getting heavier, and the girl has a lot more to tell. The flowers in the greenhouse have a very strong aroma, which confuses Lady Roden. This is probably because they are grown with the help of magic. Kiana informs us that her father has been making inquiries, and has found one very interesting thing. If the young lady is right, Carloy was kidnapped 14 years ago. Soon after his return to the palace, the Duke of Delosimo fired all his servants and more important subordinates. The Emperor does not understand why Hans did this. Kiana explains that he fired them all in name only. In reality, half of them were killed, and the other half disappeared without a trace. A total of 200 people who are no longer alive. Obviously, there is a connection between the kidnappings and the servants, otherwise there would not have been such victims. There were definitely traces of his crimes in the Duke's palace. Lady Roden thought that after that incident, the Duke changed all the estate workers, so the current servants know nothing. If they started looking for the old people, it would take a long time to find them. And if they are dead, the search will be useless. Carloy asks what alternative Kiana offers. The girl hesitantly says that there is one person who has been in the palace all this time, a person close to the ducal family who witnessed all the sad events, and she is now with His Majesty. The Emperor guesses that Lady Roden wants him to win the Empress's heart and make her his man. Taking the flower that Kiana has picked, the man says that there is one problem. He hates Yvonne. Their dislike is mutual, so it is an impossible mission. The woman is convinced that the Empress is behaving this way because of Carloy's attitude, because no one in their right mind would like to be humiliated. Seeing her husband's indignation, Kiana says that she is simply expressing her own opinion. Lady Roden can tell from Yvonne's behavior during lunch, and from the way she looks today that the Empress does not hate her lord. The man objects, saying that the Empress adores her father and would not exchange him for anyone. Kiana says that her father is very kind and caring, the exact opposite of the Duke of Delois. Compared to other fathers, he allowed her to do a lot and gave her freedom of choice. However, when he insisted on marriage, Kiana did not listen, saying that she would marry only for love. She signed a contract with His Majesty for this sole reason, even knowing that her actions could shake her father's reputation. Carla should think about what it was like for the Empress in such a situation. Any fool can understand that the Duke is far from the most tolerant and affectionate person. His Majesty asks her to stop and swears that he will think about her words. Kiana blossoms before his eyes and thanks the Emperor. She asks permission to leave because she has told him everything and is going crazy from the smell of flowers. Carloy stops her and asks if Lady Roden realizes the cruelty of her plan. Playing with the Empress's feelings is more painful than just throwing cold insults. By making a declaration of love, she betrays all her father's secrets and sends him to death herself. And then Yvonne finds out that all her feelings were just a deception. Then the Empress will have nothing left. Her father may be evil, but he gave his daughter this title. Kiana thinks it's okay. Her love is much more important. Passing by the Emperor, she explains that love makes you close your eyes to many things. And with your eyes closed, you can do whatever you want with a person. This is exactly what Kiana is hinting at. The previous imperial dynasty also weakened because of this strange feeling. For the sake of his beloved, Carloy's grandfather fought a terrible war and lost. This was the reason for the return of the Delois family to the arena. The Emperor believes that love is too much glorified. He throws away the white lily and thinks that such a strong feeling can only lead to destruction. So, he must avoid it. At breakfast, the butler tastes His Majesty's food. The man notes that no one has tried to poison him since the wedding. He has been ignoring the Empress for over a year, and in a few days he will officially take a second wife. You can clearly read hatred in the Duke's eyes. It is strange that everything is still so quiet, because Delois will not stop until he is rid of him. His inaction makes Carloy nervous. The butler believes that the Duke is not such a frivolous man as to harm the Emperor. The Lord admits that Gorton is right. Khan begins to act only in special cases. The problem is that the Lord does not know about them. Now the Empress is behaving very quietly, probably busy preparing for the appointment of her second wife. Carloy does not know what is going on in the minds of either the Duke or his daughter. The butler thinks that Yvonne cannot be harmed because the master does not let her close to him and does not even speak to his wife. A worried Kiana runs in to see His Majesty and informs him that a strange letter has been delivered to her chambers. It says that the Duke plans to poison Lady Rodin, so she must be careful. Kiana is convinced that the fact that they are trying to poison her and not the Emperor is a good sign. However, she doubts that the Duke will be able to bribe any of her servants. Still, Lady Rodin is frightened because she has no immunity to the poison. Carloy thinks it's a trap because he has never received such messages before. In addition, none of those close to him is able to deliver it. Kiana still does not understand what the trap is. The Emperor can't tell either, so they'll see what happens. There is no point in investigating now. They can change the plan, and then it will be more difficult for them. The only option left is to use Lady Rodin as bait. The woman nervously agrees. On the day of her coronation, the couple dances around the hall. Carloy notes that Kiana is even more beautiful today than ever. The audience discusses that their marriage is a gift from heaven. The happy couple whispers that there is nothing out of the ordinary so far. The woman has taken the antidote, of course, but she wants the letter to be a lie. The Emperor is destroyed by the unknown. He does not know who sent this warning and for what purpose, and most importantly, whether it was true. If so, the method and place of poisoning are still unknown. It is rather strange that the Duke would dare to take such a risky step in front of a huge number of people. Perhaps Yvonne helped him plan everything. Or vice versa, it was she who wrote the letter. The Emperor orders Kiana to rest and goes to his first wife. He tells the Empress that she has organized the event perfectly. It must have been difficult to do everything alone. She had never done anything like this before. When asked if anyone helped her, the heroine answers in the negative and reserved manner. The Lord hopes that his wife has not forgotten his words. With any wrong step, Yvonne will lose her status as Empress. She should always remember this. The woman asks what His Majesty's words mean. The Emperor explains that she should stop if she wants to harm Kiana. Since Delois was in charge of the organization, all responsibility will fall on her shoulders. For the safety of the Empress, Lady Rodin must be left alone. Hearing this, Yvonne clutches her dress. She asks if His Majesty thinks she is capable of harming anyone. The Emperor believes that his wife is capable of many things, but he wonders why she needs it. After all, if something happens to the second Empress, it will be a huge benefit for Carloy. He will be able to accuse Yvonne and execute her with all the evidence. The Emperor advises the woman to try, but not to expect a quick death. The man is surprised by the way Delois says such cold things, and then stands there with the same frozen look on his face. The Overlord does not attach any importance to this, and walks away. Standing on a pedestal, Carloy makes a celebratory speech and asks everyone to raise their glasses to the prosperity of the Croissant Empire. After drinking, His Majesty notes that there is no poison in the glass. His first wife drinks after him, and nothing happens to her either. The time for mindfulness has come. As soon as she tries to take a sip, screams are heard in the hall. The Empress begins to bleed from the mouth and falls over. A man tries to call out to Yvonne and sees that she is still conscious and needs to be given the antidote as soon as possible. Kiana tests the liquid in Delois' glass with a silver pin and discovers the poison. The Emperor holds the Empress close to him and shouts to close all the entrances and exits to the palace. At the council, the butler reports that they have not been able to find any evidence. The fact is that everyone who had any involvement in the situation was found dead, and it was not the Empress's servants. Carloy realizes that it was a cruel person who destroyed all the witnesses without leaving a trace. Someone who had planned everything clearly so that no evidence could be found. Only the Duke is capable of such a thing. Delois is outraged that the Empress could be poisoned in the palace. The Marquis Rodin says that she was engaged in the preparations herself. Therefore, it is unclear who could have wished her this. Kana jumps up and shouts that everyone knows who benefited from his daughter's death. The Marquis realizes what he is getting at and begins to defend himself. The Emperor stops them both. because it will not help. There are enough meetings for today. Carloy does not think that the Duke is capable of poisoning his own daughter. That day, Khan was terrified. The Emperor had never seen him like this before. There are two possibilities. Either the Duke made a mistake or someone changed the glasses. However, the likelihood of a mistake was low, and almost no one approached the drinks. Although there was one person, Carloy asks the doctor about Yvonne's condition. The doctor reports that her vitals are stable, and the Overlord immediately gave her an antidote, so she will soon regain consciousness. The Emperor passes by the doctor and thanks him. 4 days have passed, and the Empress still hasn't woken up. He does not understand why he came to her chambers. Perhaps the man really did not want this heroine to disappear from his life. And now gossip will spread that Yvonne is dear to him. It's even funny, because Carloy attacked Delois with suspicion. Only she could have known about everything in advance and switched the glasses. The only strange thing is that she didn't break it, but drank it all. The girl must have really gone crazy. Cold sweat appears on his wife's face. His Majesty thinks about what could be such a terrible dream. Yvonne, moving slightly, opens her eyes and looks at the Emperor, calling him Charles. The man is shocked by this address. The girl smiles and closes her eyes, believing that everything around her is a dream. No one has called the Emperor that way for a long time. It's like a reminder of the person he misses so much, but they are nothing alike. Carloy tries to understand why the image of his wife cannot get out of his head. He seems to have gone mad too, because he has no reason for Yvonne's behavior. He recalls all the moments they shared with his wife, but there is no reason for her to drink poison. However, Kiana's words about this woman's affection could be true. Delois opens her eyes again and looks at her husband. The Empress abruptly gets out of bed and asks what His Majesty is doing here. He explains that 4 days ago the heroine drank poison and asks how she feels. The girl is just a little dizzy, but nothing else. Carloy notices that his wife is too calm for someone who has been poisoned. She doesn't even ask who did it. So the Emperor asks if the woman knew about the Duke's plans, but she doesn't understand. Yvonne behaved as if she knew what was going to happen when the Emperor told her to leave Kiana alone. The man wonders if she knew that the vocals were poison and if she wrote the letter of warning. After all, no one else could have done it except the Empress. The heroine pretends not to understand what His Majesty is talking about. She would not drink the drink if she knew it was poisoned. Carl sees his wife showing no emotion at all, which makes him want to raise his voice at her. The Lord does not know why, but the Empress definitely drank the poison on purpose. If the assassination attempt had been the work of someone else, she would have asked who was behind it. The Emperor says that in her sleep, the girl mumbled the name Carl. Clutching the bedspread, Yvonne assures him that he was mistaken. The man recalls Kiana's words and takes the embarrassed Delois by the hand. Making sweet eyes, he says that he was very worried about her. The heroine's mind flashes back to when her father came and told her that in a few days she would marry the Emperor. Hans asks why his daughter is so surprised and orders her to do whatever he says and not to object. Putting his hand on Yvonne's shoulder, the man advises Lillian Lu to think about her poor mother. This is the Empress's real name. The girl is the Duke's illegitimate daughter. His legitimate daughter, Yvonne, died long ago. So the Duke found her and her mother among the poor and brought her to his palace. Almost all the time, Lillian sat in the basement and could not take a single step. And when she tried to rebel somehow, the Duke beat her almost to death. And now this man holds her sick mother captive and uses the heroine in his dirty intrigues. The Duke explains that in the palace, the girl will be in front of everyone's eyes, so she must answer questions correctly. He can't believe her, so he invites a magician whom he has been looking for a long time. This miracle worker will cast a spell of silence on Lillian. As long as the Duke and this magician walk the earth, she will not be able to tell anyone the truth. The sorcerer begins the spell, and the girl's head is wrapped in thousands of black magic chains. If unnecessary information rolls off her tongue, the heroine will lose her voice. If she wants to write, her hand will stop moving. Lily realizes that she will be suspected even with the spell. The Duke orders her to give the Emperor an heir if he wants one. The girl has already failed him, and this time Hans will not make the same mistake. Lillian recalls an incident that happened 14 years ago. Her husband reminds her of it all the time, and she can't bear to listen. The Duke explains that the heroine behaved wrongly. He doesn't even know his status. He has no idea what will happen now that she will be near the man who has become emperor. Delois fixes his eyes on her so that the lady behaves in the right way. In fact, Lillian rescued a kidnapped boy from captivity, and for the Duke, this is already bad behavior. The heroine thinks that she would gladly drain all of Hans's blood from her if she could. The emperor seems to be a noble man, but no one knows how he will behave with his new wife. Left alone, Lily thinks about whether Carloy will turn against the Duke if she really does not behave the way he wants. Judging by his behavior as a child, this will never happen. In his memoirs, the emperor sits as a little boy tied up in the basement and says that the Duke is a devil who destroyed all his relatives and even his father. He believes that the Duke wants to get all their wealth. Carl swears that he will kill him as soon as he grows up. The girl touches his face with her hand and asks him not to cry. The boy resists this, and she pulls his face by the cheeks. As a child, the emperor hated the Delois family. The heroine does not think that anything has changed now. It is unlikely that he will treat the Duke's daughter kindly. At that time, she was very thin and looked more like a boy. Now the Empress looks completely different, so he is unlikely to recognize Lillian in her. Her Majesty looks very much like a duke, and the real Yvonne, according to gossip, was the spitting image of a countess. Fate is unfair, because she looks like a person she hates to the core. She thinks that she doesn't recognize herself in the mirror, and they should have come up with some sign to recognize each other. Carl swore that he would find Lou and protect her for the rest of his life. A lot of water has flowed since then, but the heroine has not forgotten his promise. Tears come to her eyes, and she begs for a miracle to happen. The girl would forget all her suffering if only the emperor remembered her when he heard her voice, even if it would result in even more misery for her. Perhaps he would not fulfill the old promise he had made in that difficult time as a child. On the wedding day, Lillian is surprised at how skillful the Duke's acting is. He even brings tears to her eyes. Clinging to his daughter, the man reminds her that her mother's life is in his hands. When the girl approached the emperor, she realized that the miracle she had dreamed of had never happened. When the emperor came to her chambers to explain the words spoken at the wedding, the heroine recalled that she only wanted to dissuade the Duke, but she increased the king's anger. He threw hateful words at her, but she was no longer the same Lillian, and neither was Carl the old Carl. However, the girl decided to obey the Duke's will and prevent him from leaving, because it would also be beneficial for her. Lou feels completely powerless. She can't tell the emperor anything, can't take his side, can't listen to the Duke's instructions and win the king's love, and can only live unbearably and slowly rot in her own chambers. The heroine was so hopeful that she had finally escaped from hell, but in the end, she just ended up in the second circle. She thinks about when she and her mother will finally be able to escape. If only it were possible, Lillian would return to her naive childhood years. The girl plunges into her memories and sees her mother, a woman named Denise, in front of her. The heroine immediately flies up to her and hugs her tightly, asking if her illness is over and how she feels. Denise does not understand what her daughter is talking about. Perhaps she had a bad dream and hasn't woken up yet. The woman thought that her Lou was an adult, but when she looks at her, she still sees a child. The heroine convinces herself that everything around her was really a dream. The mother says that it was a very terrible nightmare in which she had to protect her daughter. Lillian, crying, says that Denise was very sick. Aunt Marielle is watching this painting and says that the girls are very cute. When Lou sees her, she throws her arms around her aunt and shouts that she missed her. Marielle doesn't understand what's wrong with the child, because she doesn't like all this tenderness. Denise explains that her daughter had a terrible dream. Lou says that it was endless, and when she woke up, she missed them so much. Her aunt calls everyone to eat stew because she got the meat and prepared everything. It was in a god-forsaken forest, in the deepest hole of the Duchy of Dell'Osimo. Lillian was born and raised there. She didn't eat until her stomach hurt, but she wasn't hungry either. Although she had no father, she was still her mother's favorite daughter. Sometimes they shivered from the cold, but there was always a place to hide from the rain. This place was their home. Lying in her mother's arms, Lou swears that she will work hard as long as she has her mother by her side. Denise is only too happy, as long as her daughter doesn't change her mind later. Lillian is sure that she will never change her mind and falls asleep soundly. This was her poor but happy childhood. However, trouble was coming. At night, Count Delois wakes her up and tells her that he is now her father. After that, the happy days were over. In fear, Lu flies out of bed as an adult. She is horrified to realize that she is in the palace and that she is not dreaming. Her mother is still in captivity. Hans yells at Yvonne because everyone around her says that she has a bad relationship with the emperor, and it cost him a lot to make her empress. The daughter replies that the emperor does not like the duke and therefore does not want to see her. If the father stops playing on his husband's nerves and gives him the right to choose, everything could change. Delois orders her not to interfere in their affairs and not to sit idly by, because she will never repay her mother's treatment. The girl says she will try to make a difference. The duke insists that she do her best. If he is not satisfied with the result of her actions, then Lu may not see her mother next time. The empress asks her not to talk like that because the duke made her a promise. Hans shouts that she has no right to ask for anything after what she has done. If she wants to see her loved one, she must act. Everyone is talking about the problems in his and Carla's marriage. Delois has just recently staged a coup. If this continues, she will soon be able to see her mother. It's good that she is far away from all this and is not in danger. The duke is cruel, but only with her. He has always treated his mother with care. Denise says that nothing will happen to her. When Lu gets married, they will rarely see each other, so she wants to enjoy every minute of it. The duke, taking the patient's hand, advises her not to think about her daughter. She needs to worry about herself first, and then she will stay with Lillian for a very, very long time. However, all of the Khan's kindness is just a mask with which he keeps her mother captive. Still, Denise's health improved at the manor. If her mother had gotten worse in the spacious tomorrow room with lots of servants, it would have been strange. Delois may be tipping over, but if her mother can continue to live a comfortable life, Lu is ready for anything. The woman tells her daughter that she will not be able to attend her wedding. The duke says that in her condition, she might not survive the trip for long. Denise apologizes for not being able to support her daughter on such an important day. Still, it's her holiday. People gossip that the emperor is a good man, so she is calm about Lu. The mother did not even realize that she was living a lie. When she became pregnant, the duke was afraid of public condemnation because of his illegitimate child and ran away. However, he soon returned saying that he wanted to give them what he could not give his wife and daughter. Denise believed his sweet words and caring attitude. Because of her illness, she was very weak and perhaps could not appreciate their situation. But at the same time, we should give credit to the duke, whose skillful acting can convince anyone. Lillian was also initially happy to see her father. Who would have thought that he would lead her to hell? The daughter tells her mother that it's okay, because her health is the most important thing now. Denise is happy that Lu got the best education and became such a beautiful girl. Time flies incredibly fast. The woman asks if her child is happy. Looking away, her daughter confirms. Denise would not be able to live if it were otherwise. The woman is even ready to leave the heroine alone, because she now has a duke. Lu realizes that Hans has thought everything through. If the mother finds out that she is being used to put pressure on her daughter, a person like her will immediately throw herself out the window. Delois knows perfectly well that the girl cannot tell her mother the whole truth. Denise gives the heroine a sheet she made herself. The daughter is incredibly touched by this gift. The mother hugs her and asks her not to cry, because not all brides have to do this before the wedding. The girl asks Denise to take good care of herself, and she, in turn, will visit her often. Her mother convinces her that she shouldn't. There is enough food and everything else. The daughter should take care of herself. It is much better than if she had not married at all because of one of her parents. Every time Lu sees not her mother with blood in her face and often sick, but her mother eating and tasty food, not the mother who plucks flowers to eat them, but the one who admires them in the garden and smiles, she has no regrets. She will never regret it again. Everything around is trifling. The Empress has endured the Duke's cruelty, so she will survive this. The main thing is to wait. Carloy is openly told that the main thing is that his wife does not turn up her nose at the wealthy imperial family. He warns His Majesty that she hears everything, but the man doesn't care. Lu pretends not to hear the Emperor's rude words and won't worry about it. Karl explains that Yvonne is rather a duke's daughter than an empress. Her father wondered why they didn't eat together and why they hadn't shared a bed yet. The girl thinks that it will all end soon if she just has to be patient a little longer. Even if she pretends that she doesn't care, it's hard to bear Karl's views on her. Outwardly, he hasn't changed. He remains the same as in his childhood. But inside, that boy is no longer there. Perhaps Karloy wants her to die by his hand. These meetings tear her soul apart. The Duke will not even listen to her, although she will not speak out loud to the Emperor. It is always like this with Karloy. When he speaks to her, the Empress cannot ignore him. But no matter what she says, the answers just make her husband angry. She knows that he hates the Duke and tries to tolerate him, but sometimes she hates the ruler too. There is nothing more Yvonne can do. If only the Count would advise her, he is also threatening her. The girl simply asks the Emperor to come to her chambers. Say that if he does not come, the Duke will not be deterred. However, there are too many extra eyes and ears in the room. Her servants are watching and reporting every rustle that happens here. And she is under a spell, so she can't tell Lu anything. She feels humiliated, because even when she begs the Emperor, she still receives only refusals. Karloy is never around, and she hasn't seen her mother since she became Empress. With tears in her eyes, the heroine thinks that more than anything else in the world, she just wants to hug her mother and look into her eyes. Lillian doesn't understand why everything in her life is like this. At first, Yvonne thought that Keanu was being brought to torture her. A man who had no interest in girls before marrying her suddenly takes a second wife. In addition, among the countries on the continent, only girls from Coronation and Lartua are allowed to be concubines. The official status of the second wife has not been mentioned for 200 years. It's amazing that the Emperor decided to restore this tradition. At first, the heroine thought that the second wife appeared only to put the aristocrats in their place. However, Karloy looked really happy. Kiana Rodin gives the impression of someone who is very easy to fall in love with. For her sake, it is possible to restore the old title. Much has changed, but the Lord's smile remains the same. When he was a child, he dreamed of a happy life with his beloved. The girl was surprised that he wanted a family, because she only needed a mother. Karl just wants to know what it's like to have someone on your side who always supports you. If the man has actually met a girl who soothes his heart, then Lillian has nothing to do with it. After all, she will never be able to become such a person for the Emperor. But still, Lu cannot forget the smile with which he looked at her as a child. Although the heroine knows that she cannot become close enough to him, she cannot put His Majesty out of her mind. She misses those times incredibly and is slowly going crazy. Back then, the girl wanted to hurt herself by resembling the Duke. She even inherited from Delois the fact that she could not calmly approach Peaches because she immediately fell down from the smell. Lillian did not want the Emperor to ever see her in the state she was in her chambers. Lu does not even realize what he is doing here. Sometimes, she realizes that Karloy is right. If the girl had really done everything for him, she would have been better off dead. And if she were a faithful dog of the Duke, the Emperor's words would sound like an empty sound to her. In such a state, a woman is incapable of doing anything, but she has to act. When the Duke finds out that his daughter is going to organize a coronation ceremony for the second Empress, he thinks she has gone mad. The daughter calmly convinces him that this is the perfect chance to poison Kiana. There is no telling when the Emperor will bring her closer to state affairs. In addition, Karloy does not allow her to meet Lady Rodin in person. The Duke wonders if she really wants him to poison this woman. Lu confirms that there is a better way to get rid of her anyway, and it should be before the coronation. Delois believes that this way his daughter will fall under suspicion if Kiana is poisoned at the ceremony she has prepared. Lillian says that her father will definitely be able to influence people and resolve the situation. Lady Rodin will still be an unknown upstart, not a member of the ruling dynasty. Hans is shocked that his daughter has come up with such thoughts. He orders her to prepare a list of names of servants who will work at the ceremony. The man walks away, and Yvonne sits with her hands clenched into fists. The next day, the Empress decides to go out into the garden in the rain, but a maid wants to stop her. The girl goes to the garden because her mother loved flowers, and she misses her. The memory that Karl also loved flowers creeps into her mind, but she quickly pushes it away. The heroine couldn't postpone the coronation of the second empress or ignore the Duke's insistent demands, so she started talking about poisoning. Now she doesn't know what to do. 14 years ago, she told little Karl to hold on to life and do his best. And she lives, going with the flow, because she is not capable of anything else. She would rather be washed away by this rain. Suddenly, the emperor's voice is heard, and the woman recalls that he had not been interested in this place before and rarely came here. So he came just at the moment when she was thinking about the old days. Hearing the words for the ceremony, Lu realizes that the emperor doesn't care what's in a person's heart. No matter how many rains pass, it seems he will never remember anything. So she has to stop paying attention to this stupid Karloi. When a branch falls on the emperor, her body automatically reacts, ignoring the decision she made. Even the empress finds this rescue strange. What can we say about the man? The woman simply did the same thing he did once. Lillian only returned the debt of her childhood. Everything was similar, even the words. How the heroine wishes that Karl would remember her at least once. But the Lord buried his memories like something dirty. Everything in her chest tightens, and she can't breathe. When Yvonne meets Kiana Rodin, she thinks she envies her, because such a woman cannot have problems. Lady Rodin is very innocent, and it would be a pity if she dies because of the heroine. If Karloi really loves her, Lillian needs to somehow get the antidote and pass it on in advance. When the emperor personally invites Keanu to the garden, Lu is overwhelmed with resentment. Once upon a time, His Majesty was supposed to show her the garden, but he never fulfilled this promise. Charles did not hold back a single word. The Empress tells Marielle that she simply cannot let her second wife die, because she is the woman she loves. When she and the maid come to the special flowers, she tells them not to touch them, because they are special plants that bloom only in the Maha Empire. When they touch them, the leaves fall off. And when an insect touches it, the flower kills itself. Even flowers make their own choices, but the Empress cannot do so. Suddenly, the idea comes to her to drink the poison herself, but to take the antidote beforehand. Marielle is worried that this might not work, because the Duke is no fool. If they know in advance what kind of poison it is, they will choose the right antidote. The maid is still convinced that it is worth handing it over to Lady Rodin. The Empress will not be able to do this, because no one will let her near Kiana. Moreover, if something goes wrong, no one will think that the heroine did it on purpose. Then the Duke will not harm his mother. Marielle believes that it is too dangerous, because Delois will see the glasses being switched. However, there will be no witnesses or those involved, because the Duke always gets rid of them. If the maid helps the Empress, she will do everything. The maid asks why her mistress is doing this. Perhaps she still has feelings for His Majesty. The woman explains that she just wants to have a choice. Marielle begs the Empress to be careful, and she will find out everything. On the day of the coronation, Lu holds a glass of poison that was intended for Kiana. This is probably her last choice in life, but her heart is too light. The woman wants to escape so badly because she has been pushed to the point where even her mother cannot keep her alive. The Duke knew that the time would come when everything would be forgotten, and she had no peaceful hopes either. Karl always wanted his wife to disappear. Why then is he now standing there like a frightened fool? Still, dying in the hands of your lover is not such a bad idea. From the very beginning, the Dark Forest was inhabited by hunters and bandits who kidnapped and abused people. At that time, Lillian had to earn her living on her own. Therefore, the Empress was not ashamed to help all sorts of scoundrels run their household. It was the first time they stole a child, and it was her age. The boy screamed for her to run away as long as she could. Lu realized that he was worried about her. A girl in his place would have just screamed for help. After all, it is impossible to worry more about someone you see for the first time than about yourself. A man came into the room and forced the heroine to clean, because she was not paid for standing around. The prisoner was outraged that his new acquaintance was in the same gang as the bandits. Lu was scared to see the child being abused. She wanted to leave, but was detained. The man orders her to go behind the witch's tree and pick up a parcel from a stranger in black. The guards will not check the medicine in her hands. All the locals know about Lillian's mother's illness. The heroine thinks that it is better to clean up the place while the poor boy is being beaten. She will return here at night. In the evening, Lou runs back to the child, because everything should have been over by now. The boy is sitting on the floor crying, and there is not a single living spot left on his face. The girl explains that he is only making the situation worse by resisting. It is better to just keep quiet. She wants to touch his face, but the kidnapper turns away. Lillian can't even give him a slap because he is already poor. The heroine finds out that the prisoner is only 13 years old and a year older than her. Lou wiped off all the blood, and it seems that he was not beaten on the face. Only his cheeks and lips are a little swollen. Carl says that the girl is only pretending to be good because she is in the same gang as these bandits. The heroine advises her new friend not to say too much. The washed-up guy turns out to be very handsome. It seems that Lillian has never seen anything better in her life. Carloy is a little confused by the excessive attention from the heroine. The girl thinks that a guy is only handsome when he is silent. She puts bread in his mouth and orders him to eat because she cannot leave the prisoner hungry. For Carl, the taste of the bread seems new, so he asks what kind it is. Lou is surprised to explain that it is hordu, which is barley dough bread. It is the only kind of bread that ordinary people can eat. It seems that the guy is from a wealthier family than she had imagined. After bribing the stranger with bread and jam, the heroine learns his name. Lou thinks that she could not be more proud. Carl still doesn't understand why the gang member is helping him. If she's not going to talk, she can get out of here. The stranger is no better than her friends. The heroine doesn't pay attention to his words and says that he has lids all over his face. This makes Carl feel ashamed and shouts for the girl to take the lids off, to Lou's loud laughter. The heroine orders them to be quiet because they might be heard. She puts Capella on his wounds and says that she will heal him now. She will be killed if they see the girl sitting with him. Carl objects that giving bread is not a good attitude. The girl may not even feed him anymore. First, she wipes it off and then greases it again. Lylan doesn't know if she should have gone so far as to help a stranger. However, no one can just leave the eyes filled with fear. She had the same look when Lou was desperately looking for money. The heroine takes the bucket of water and walks away. Thinking about it, Carl closes his eyes and begs her not to leave. Carloy cries and shouts not to be left alone. The girl realizes that regardless of status and age, everyone feels fear. She decides to stay with the boy and hugs him by the shoulders. The heroine stayed with Carl until dawn and knew very little about him. Only that he is from a wealthy family and that the kidnapping customer is someone who wants to belong to his family. In the morning, the bandits discuss how the prisoner is actively trying to escape, but to no avail. Lou, who is sweeping the yard at the time, notices that the men are not particularly happy. They are outraged that the customer has not picked him up yet and left a small deposit. It seems that things are not going as smoothly as they planned. The bandits might kill Carl. Lillian is worried about this situation, so she decides to quietly go to the prisoner. He's sitting on the floor, again crossed because of his escape attempt. The guy probably didn't notice the bandit's mood. As soon as he looks up, he menacingly orders Lou to get out. He looked at him with a look full of hatred. Although the girl was there, she still did not help him escape. Lillian throws the bag of bread on the ground and says that Carl can manage on his own, and she will take the rest in the morning. Turning around, the heroine says goodbye. Carl's eyes get wet, and he apologizes. Now the girl understands the feeling when a mother bird looks at her chick. Sitting down next to him, the girl asks the prisoner not to worry, because he will soon get out. People were kept here for a long time, but they were always released. Carl asks why the heroine helps these pagans. She explains that her mother is very ill, she needs medicine, and there is nowhere else to earn money. Lou analyzes why she tells all the details. She probably doesn't want to seem like a bad person. When Carloy asks if her mother is very ill, the heroine is surprised. She thought that the boy would make fun of her or mock her. Carl tries to comfort her and says that the woman will get better soon. In the future, she was warned that she would need more expensive medicine. Carloy asks her to look inside her pants, which makes her blush like cancer. She doubts that she should do this, but after thinking about it, she puts her hand in. There, the heroine finds a red bag and wonders what is in it. It contains a brooch that is very expensive. If the girl sells it, she will get a lot of money. Lilin is surprised by this offer. The prisoner does not understand why she is resisting. Lu explains that she will not release him even if Carl gives her the brooch, because if she does, she and her mother will suffer greatly. Carl is convinced that it is better for the girl to have the jewel than for the bandits. Lu repeats that he will not be able to release him to make sure that the prisoner understands. He didn't expect to be pardoned by some scoundrels. Lillian doesn't understand how her new friend can do this. At first, he tells her to run, even though he is tied up. He gives her a thing whose value she can't even imagine. It's really strange. According to the heroine, Carl will definitely get out soon, so he doesn't need this brooch. The girl is surprised that the guy really believed it. Of course, she feels sorry for him, but the thought that her mother will need new medicines soon will close her mind. Lu asks if the prisoner really expects nothing from her, and the guy confirms. The heroine blossoms before our eyes and is incredibly grateful to her savior. Carloy blushes at this reaction and asks her friend not to go out at night and to come back more often. Lu agrees, because there is nothing difficult about it. The girl notices that his ears are red and is surprised that this rebel can be so nice. Carl shouts why the stranger is drilling him with such a curious look and asks him not to look like that. Lillian asks why she is not allowed to do so. Maybe it's because she's dirty, but the guy didn't say that. Beautiful people like him think that way. It's just obvious. Carl shouts that this is not true, and the heroine has incredibly beautiful eyes. There is a dead silence and the prisoner blushes. Lu says with satisfaction that his friend must be very hungry. He even complimented her to get food. Carloy does not understand her train of thought. The heroine, like an angel, suggests that he should not look at him with his eyes so wide open. Lillian, when she goes to get food, notices that the nobleman has one nice trait. You never know whether he wants to please or just says something sincerely. The girl remembers that the back of the brooch was very shiny and that she could see the reflection of her eyes in it. She thinks that they are nothing special, but since she already has the bribe in her pocket, she needs to hurry up with the food. Lu runs home because she wants to show her mother something. She brought home a huge bag of yak medicine, enough for a whole year. The woman can no longer do needlework and take care of her health. The mother is confused as to where her daughter could get so many medicines and at what cost. Lu assures her that she did nothing wrong and asks if she is a good girl for trying so hard. When Denise gets better, they will be able to go out and buy flowers together. The child will even be able to wrap some food for them on the way. The mother is worried, but she hugs her daughter tightly and thanks her. The result of the expensive medicine was incredible. 2 days after Denise started taking them, she began to cough less. And since she was able to move more, she started looking for something to do. Lillian decides that she has to tell Carl about everything when she runs to her mom. She wants to tell him that she is incredibly grateful for his help, because now Denise feels better, and the girl is very grateful to him. The heroine had just gone to thank him when she overheard the bandits talking. They were saying that it was just a child, and that trouble was not so far away. The man does not think that the Duke will pat them on the head if they leave everything to chance. If they do the job to the best of their ability, they can use the money to move to the kingdom of Matcha and end their dog's life once and for all. The bandits will start acting in 3 days, so it's time to get well prepared. The girl realizes that they are actually ready to destroy the prisoner. Thanks to Carl, she was able to buy her mother medicine, but if he dies, it will turn out that the money was incredibly dirty. She shouldn't have helped the prisoner and taken anything in return. Lu runs to her new friend, and he is happy to see her. He is waiting for food and glows with happiness. The heroine is silent and stands like a pillar, so the guy guesses that something has already happened. The girl presses her lips together and thinks that she wants to repay Carl for his help in the same way. Therefore, she will save the boy. Just in time, it rains heavily. With the help of one stone that concentrates water, the children will be able to destroy the roof of the warehouse. They will succeed if they do not get caught in the downpour while escaping. This is possible with another stone that disperses the rain and moves it to another place. Then no one will understand anything. You have to hurry, because they are already attracting too much attention. The jeweler to whom the girl sold the stone meets her on the street. He asks her where she could have gotten this precious brooch. The man suspects that it was a well-made fake. The heroine denies everything, and suddenly realizes that she was paid less than she should have been. The jeweler disagrees and asks her what the child's name is. The girl tells him her name, and the man continues to ask her where she lives. The child does not understand why she is being asked about all this. The merchant notices the fluvia stone in her hands, which makes it rain. Lou ignores him and turns and walks away because she has to save Carl as soon as possible. However, when she comes to the boy, he says that he does not want her to save him. The heroine does not understand why the prisoner does this, because they simply will not have another chance. The girl says that the bandits are going to kill Carloy and he needs to run away. The guy knew that no one would come to rescue him. They probably decided that it was better to get rid of the emperor. Lylan thinks that no family in their right mind would leave their child to such a fate. Lou asks if he's not really going to stay here, because it's just stupid when there is a way to escape. The prisoner has nowhere else to go. No one is waiting for him at home, and he has no other place to go. Therefore, the heroine should stop, because she can get into trouble herself. Lillian realizes that Carl is just tired of being held, and that's why he says such terrible things. However, now is not the time to go soft. The girl hits the guy in the face with all her might to wake him up. He immediately starts screaming and crying. Lou takes the prisoner by the shirt and explains that he must take revenge on his offenders. He has to go home and find out why it happened. Carloy needs to know who ordered him to steal it and make the perpetrators bathe in their own tears. Carl doesn't see any point in returning anyway, because he will end up the same way in any case. The heroine orders him to stop talking nonsense and asks him for the last time whether the prisoner is really going to die here, or at least try to do something. Seeing the reaction of his new friend, Lou lets him go and is about to leave. Carl, inspired by her determination, instantly agrees and shouts that he will follow her. In freedom, he will at least be able to do something. But here his future husband is tied up and helpless. Outside, it is raining, and the bandits are running around collecting things from the houses where the roofs were hit. Children, covered with stones against the rain, are about to go outside. The boy doubts that they will survive at all, because it is raining incredibly hard. The girl explains that this is why they have these stones hanging on them. After 2 Sundays in the tied position, it will be hard for Carla to move, but she will have to endure it. Suddenly, there are terrifying screams and a thud. Lou is lying on the floor with a friend who has protected her from the stones. The heroine jumps up and asks why the guy did it. Carl explains that he cannot leave another person in trouble. He saved Lillian, and instead of gratitude, he hears reproaches. Ashamed, Lou thanks him, saying that it's time to go, because the bandits will soon come to check on her. The girl grabs her friend's hand and leads her away. This makes the prisoner's heart blossom with hope. However, as they run, Lou trips over a rock and falls to his knees. Seeing this, Carl says that this is why he asked her to be careful. Quickly getting up, the girl says it's nothing and asks her companion to hurry. Carloy grabs the rescuer's hand and says that he cannot be healthy if he does not pay attention to his wounds. He said this because a wound appeared on the heroine's arm. Lou wonders why he is behaving this way. Perhaps it is because he comes from a wealthy family. The boy asks her to take care of herself, at least a little. Lillian realizes that something is wrong with him by his behavior. After examining Carl, she notices a wound on his back. The heroine immediately realizes that he was injured while protecting her from the stones. The guy makes excuses that it was because tree branches were scratching his back while they were running. Lou does not believe his words and takes him to the nearest cave to at least apply medicine. Since it happened, you decide to stay in the cave until the rain stops. Carloy wonders why this strange stranger is helping him. The girl stands still and thinks about her memories. She says that she simply cannot leave a man in trouble. At these words, Carl can hardly contain his laughter. The heroine notices this and asks why he is having so much fun, because she had to crawl out of her skin to save the prisoner. At the sight of the boy, the girl also starts laughing incessantly. Carl calls out to Lillian and shows her the first flowers that have bloomed outside. At his house, they bloom under the influence of magic, so they are of a completely different color. The heroine is surprised by this, because the flowers bloom much more beautifully and brightly under the influence of magic. It is clear that Carl is not happy with them. His gardener told him that wild plants never grow in the same way. Differences remain, although they are very noticeable. And this flower looks exactly like Lou. The girl doesn't see any similarities and is a little nervous. She also loves flowers, and it seems that the aristocrat likes them too. Carl loves to look at them, because flowers seem to slow down time. He is ready to admire them forever. Lou's mother also loves plants, so she always wanted a big garden. The boy has a huge garden at home, and the girl will be delighted when he shows her. The heroine blushes and starts coughing, which makes the kidnapper a little scared. The young man wonders how long it will take to get there. The girl explains that if they keep going, they will soon come to Markia. It's safe there, so everything will be fine. Markia is the city where the Margrave is, so Carl will be safe there. This information makes the young man shine. Carl orders the rescuer to wait out the rain here and return home, and then run away with his mother from the settlement. By then, the robbers will have already seen that his body is gone. The girl is convinced that they will quickly forget about it. Carl explains that she just doesn't know the Duke, and as soon as he finds out that the action has failed, he will wake up everyone involved, along with the village. The heroine is frightened and thinks this is impossible. Right now, because of the heavy rain, Lou can't do anything, but no one ever knows when trouble will strike. If she can, she should go to Markia. He takes his cloak and covers the wounded woman. In the city, Carl will try to find her. Turning around, the young man asks the heroine to take care of herself. Lou stops the kidnapper, because it is still raining heavily outside, and they should wait it out together. Smiling, the guy says he can't stay any longer because it's not safe to be around him. Lillian's help is invaluable, so the aristocrat is forever indebted to her. He will take care of everything from there. The young man is really grateful and will never forget her act. All this time, he had nothing to protect him and nothing dear to his heart. The girl does not understand what he is getting at. Carl swears that when he returns, he will definitely find and protect his rescuer. The heroine admits that her name is Lillian Lou. The guy even likes the name. But still, Lou is more suitable for the girl, because it reminds the aristocrat of the word broom. The rescuer explodes in anger and asks how Carl knows she is a girl. Now Lillian realizes that he didn't just say beautiful eyes for nothing. The young man swears that he will survive and return. Lou will not know grief with him because she will be protected, so the girl must also survive. Asking her not to forget him, Carl kisses Lillian on the forehead. Tears stream from the heroine's eyes, but she agrees to meet again. The boyfriend has already left, so the girl is left alone in the cold cave until morning. 253. When Yvonne opens her eyes again, she sees a painting of the unknown princess principal. They loved each other so much that they died at the same moment and time. The heroine does not understand how she could forget about her mother and risk everything. If she had made a different choice as a child, they would both be happy now. The Empress notices that the Lord is sitting by the bed. He says that his wife was calling for someone named Carl. Her Majesty does not understand why she would call for her husband. Now she feels uncomfortable because of the stupid dream. Suddenly, her husband takes her hand and says that he was worried. The woman thinks she is still dreaming. However, she is not the same Lillian anymore, and she will no longer be on a leash to her feelings. Therefore, the Empress says that Carl has a lot to do and takes her hand away, and that she shouldn't come just because of her. This surprises the Emperor. After all, there is nothing supernatural about a man worrying about his wife. He is happy that Yvonne woke up and was not hurt. The woman does not want to indulge in illusions because she knows that she will have to go through the same thing again. The Empress believes that Charles is uneasy at heart because of what he has seen, so he should go and rest. The Emperor understands her hint and gets up to leave. The girl thinks that if this happens again, she will not be able to stand it. Malloy comes to the poisoned woman. He is a doctor who hid the cuts and scars inflicted by the Duke. He loyally serves only Delois. Malloy also did not understand how she could survive after drinking the poison. The woman wants to deceive him, but does not know how. The doctor says that heaven helped them, because the Emperor managed to give his wife the antidote in time. Yvonne is surprised by what she hears. Malloy repeats what he said and asks why the Empress is so surprised. Coronation is very good at poisons, and the Lord also pays a lot of attention to this issue. It turns out that the heroine was saved by Carloy. She doesn't understand why her husband decided to be kinder if he couldn't stand her at all at first. The doctor orders her to stay in bed for a few days and follow a strict diet, taking medications. Malloy takes the Empress by the hand and says that he was worried that the poison would not make itself felt, but everything was fine. He asks her to let him know if the scars reappear. The Duke is very worried about his daughter, so he will visit her as soon as he learns that the child is conscious. The woman does not believe these words because Delois showed her nothing but cruelty. Her entire body is covered with scars from the beatings, and he has put a spell of silence on her. It's ridiculous to think that this man can care about anyone. You need to get some strength before he comes. Carloy asks Gorton how he thinks the Empress feels about him. The butler does not quite understand his master's question. The Emperor clarifies that perhaps she hates him. The servant, looking at her behavior, can tell that the Lord does not like this woman. However, the husband would not say that Her Majesty hates the master. He does not even know how to say it correctly. Charles has never shown her the attention she needs. The Emperor realizes that if Yvonne really hated him, she would have broken everything she could get her hands on. Kiana was right that confronting the Duke alone is nonsense. We need to involve his wife and use her to destroy Delois. But there is no other way to lure the Empress to his side than to use her feelings. The problem is that Karl cannot know for sure whether the woman will behave. He says that he needs to find a way to get closer to Yvonne. The butler is surprised that his master has finally made up his mind and hopes that he knows how to act. Carloy has always been cold to women, so it won't be easy. They don't even have a person to teach the Emperor how to court, which is not surprising. The Duke flies into his daughter's room and asks what happened. The girl is already sitting in a chair and says that she does not know. Perhaps her father made a mistake somewhere. The Duke assures her that he could not have made a mistake, so all suspicions now fall on his daughter. The heroine says that she would never do that, because then she would have no one to leave her mother for. It could be the Marquis Rodin's business. He could afford a lot if his daughter became Empress. Suddenly, this argument is interrupted by a maid who says that the Emperor has sent something to his wife. The maids enter the room with a huge number of gifts. The Duke plucks a note from the flowers, wishing the man a speedy recovery. One of the maids puts another box on the table. The Duke and Empress are frozen in shock because the Emperor has brought his wife earrings and a necklace with a wolf's tear stone. Tears is the necklace of the ruling dynasty, which is passed down to empresses from generation to generation. If we are to continue this tradition, then it is right to give such a gift to a woman before the wedding. Yvonne doesn't understand why Carloy sent it to her at that time and right now. Delois is furious because the Emperor dared to recognize her title only now, after the girl almost lost her life. The father asks his daughter what the Lord said to her, and the heroine tells him that he simply wished her recovery and said that he was very worried. The Duke shouts that the warring dynasties are more worried about each other as Emperor and Empress. The thought crosses his mind that these two have already conspired behind his back. His daughter should have known that His Majesty hates the entire Delois family. Yvonne says that if they watch, they will find out what the Emperor is up to if he behaves this way. The girl, like the Duke, believes that this is some kind of a decoy because she has returned from the dead and only Carloy has changed. The woman swears that she will follow her husband and find out what is going on in his head. The Duke asks what has gotten into his daughter because before she only knew to agree and nod like a little bird. The Empress lies and says that she has come to her senses after being in oblivion. Only God knows when someone will try to poison her like this again. And the longing for her mother also takes its toll. When the Duke leaves, She is convinced that he will not suspect her for some time. But Yvonne doesn't know when everything will change and she will be grabbed by the throat again. Even if she came back from the dead, it's not like that. The girl managed not to die in a certain way and stayed alive. In this case, she will no longer live as she did before and will definitely change. His Majesty is asked whether he would treat the person who has been playing him differently if he sent him wolf's tears. The Emperor understands what Kiana is trying to say. He knows that the Empress and the Duke thought it was a trap, because they are not stupid. The Marquis Rodin, who is also sitting with them, thinks that it only set them up, because the aristocrats on the Duke's side will think they can get away with it. Kiana asks if, knowing their reaction, the Emperor will turn the page and change his attitude. The Emperor does not know what worries Lady Rodin so much. Hearing this address, the woman says that some guest might think that they are complete strangers to each other. The man recalls that the Marquis only knows that he and Kiana are going to use the Empress to attack the Duke. The man is not aware of their contract. The second wife says that now Karl must call her Empress. Even if there was a poisoning at the coronation, the blame for which will certainly be laid on her shoulders. No one has yet cancelled the new title. The Marquis begins to make excuses that it was certainly not them. Kiana tells her father that his words will not make her any safer than she is now. He had better think of a real way to destroy the Duke of Delois. The Emperor is of the same opinion, so the man simply cannot understand them. The Emperor thinks that although the Marquis is the head of the Rodin family, who has been loyal to the ruling family for so many years, he has been observing the situation because of his gentleness, so that he could quietly escape from his duties. It was only thanks to his daughter that he was tied up. The Marquis says that His Majesty has no children, so he cannot understand all the feelings of a parent. The man lets these words pass between his ears and orders his second wife's father to prevent the power of the nobles who are now on the Duke's side, because that is his job. The Marquis assures him that it is so easy only in words. The man had already told the Emperor once before that he was not the one to lead the nobles. At these words, Carloy puts his cup down on the table and grows dark before his eyes. Kiana asks her father to stop, and she hands the Marquis some bread. The man refuses, because both the bread and the jam come from the land of the Duchy of Delosimo. The Emperor's head begins to hurt from this whining. Kiana says that she will ask the servants to bring the corda that her father loves so much. A familiar name pops into Carl's head. Carlo swears that he will bring whatever the Marquis wants, if only he will shut up. Kiana interrupts this quarrel and says that in any case, if it becomes apparent that the Lord is up to something, even pulling the Empress to their side, she will still keep her husband at a distance. The girl is convinced that she should be more careful. If you listen to her, you might get the impression that the Emperor has already confessed his love to Yvonne. He merely expressed his intention to recognize the first Empress, and the beginning will set the tone for the affair. This man gives the Marquis goosebumps all over his body. Kiana asks what the Empress has sent in response to His Majesty's favor. When the Emperor remains silent, the second wife guesses that Yvonne has simply ignored him. Marielle asks Her Majesty what the lady is thinking about. The woman is tormented by the thought of seeing her mother as soon as possible. Taking her mistress by the hand, the maid asks her not to worry, because she has already given Jane an order. If something happens to Denise, she will write the secret code in a letter. The Empress knows that the maid's daughter would not dare to disobey. However, it is very dangerous to be separated from her mother. She needs to find an excuse to leave the palace as soon as possible. Yvonne has to find a way to avoid the Duke's suspicions and return to Denise. The Empress thanks Jane very much because of Deloise's supervision, her mother probably cannot send letters in peace. His Highness sent Yvonne a message. He said that he would like to have dinner together in the main building of the palace in the evening, and he also sent flowers. Marielle thinks that this is some kind of mistake, that this information should have been passed on to the second Empress. However, there is no mistake. This message is for the first Empress. The woman knows that the main building is a personal place for the Emperor. It is strange that he invited her there. The maids ask Her Highness what to do. First, Yvonne decides to meet with him, because that way she can come up with a plan. The aristocrat says she will be there at the appointed time. Marielle asks what to do with the flowers and suggests putting them in her mistress's room. The woman agrees, but does not know what to do with plants that lack sincerity. The maid does not understand what is happening. She assumes that His Majesty was really shocked that his wife almost died from poison. The Empress herself doubts this. The Lord is informed that Yvonne will not be able to come because she is not feeling well. Before that, he was told that the Empress had agreed to dinner. The man believes that she is very fickle in her decisions. Marielle is scolding one of the maids because she didn't notice the flowers that made Her Majesty feel sick. The girl excuses herself by saying that she just didn't notice them because they are plain white. This impudent girl is Lady Anson. She is the younger sister of Count Anson, who is no different from the Duke of Delois. Perhaps the lady often makes mistakes, so her main task is to keep an eye on Yvonne and ignore everyone else. Malloy is outraged by the behavior of the servants, which gives the Empress a headache. He shouts for them to get out. The doctor is also surprised that the Emperor does not know what flowers his wife should approach. The Duke has the same symptoms, so His Majesty must have some idea. Lady Anson assumes that Carloy gave the routines on purpose. The room falls into dead silence, and the Empress's heart awakens a long-forgotten pain. Marielle sees this and drives the maid out of the room because she cannot hear it anymore. The maid asks her not to pay attention to Lady Anson's words, as His Majesty would never do such a thing. The woman understands this, because this man simply does not know anything about her, and is not interested. Carl will hate her more when he finds out that even in this she is like the Duke. It's better if he stays in the dark forever. Gabrielle Ruin delivered a message to His Majesty today. She is the youngest daughter of Viscount Mikoshi, Count Anson's vassal. She originally came from a family whose members could not serve at the palace. But thanks to Anson, she became a lady-in-waiting and seems to appreciate it very much. In any case, the Duke has assigned these people to the Empress only to keep an eye on her, which is the same thing. Gabriel offers to report that Yvonne became ill because of the routine. The woman forbids it, because His Majesty probably thinks she's making an excuse. Marielle begins to worry about this, but the Empress reassures her. Rouen informs her that the Emperor invites the hostess to dinner tomorrow, since the situation has already arisen today. Since the heroine wants to rest, she sends the maids out of the chambers. The girl wraps herself in a blanket and reflects on the fact that as soon as she decided to act, she became weak again. The strange thing is that even her body features are similar to those of the Duke. Yvonne doesn't understand why Carloy sent the routine. The next evening, the Empress arrives at the main tower of the palace. Her husband, who meets her, smiles and admits that his wife has not yet fully recovered from the effects of the poison. The Empress explains that it was not because of the poison, she just felt a little sick. Nevertheless, seeing that Her Majesty is well, the ruler's soul is calmer. The woman does not believe these words, and Carl asks if she really thought he did not want to see her. Seeing the depressed expression on his wife's face, the Emperor quickly corrects himself. He apologizes for having misspoken and explains that he is really worried about Yvonne and hopes that there will be no misunderstanding between them. Carloy suggests that they sit down at the table. Lady Anson is already telling Gabrielle that she was right, and the Emperor did it on purpose. His Majesty asks why the woman does not sit down, and the maid explains that if the mistress approaches the flowers of the rutan, the poison will penetrate her skin. Carl realizes his mistake and orders all the flowers to be taken away immediately. He is outraged that he was going to encourage the Empress and does not know such elementary things. The man also notices that she has inherited all the Duke's characteristics. Yvonne sits down on a chair with a sad expression on her face. The Emperor apologizes to his wife because he did not know about such details. Food is placed in front of the couple, and the heroine clenches her fists. His Majesty notices this and asks what Delois does not like this time. Marielle wants to explain the situation to the Emperor, but the hostess stops her with a wave of her hand. She wonders if His Majesty is deliberately mocking his wife. If so, then Carla should choose another way. Carl is a little confused by these words and asks for an explanation. The woman says that yesterday he sent her a bouquet of flowers. Even knowing that it was a routine, Yvonne still thought that the Emperor did not choose the flowers. The Empress explains that these flowers cause her allergies. Unsuspectingly, she put the bouquet in her room and fainted. Carloy nervously advises his wife to look at other bouquets more carefully. Yvonne had no idea how difficult it would be for this man to simply apologize. She adds that she hates the peaches in front of her. If she eats one, she will immediately start choking. Carlos orders to take away all the dishes and bring new ones. He is surprised at how much the Empress cannot tolerate. In every way, his wife is like two peas in a pod. These words make Yvonne feel disgusted. She immediately covers the scar on her arm from the torture that suddenly appeared. Her humiliated state does not leave her face. It's strange, not that Carlos would do this for a day or two. The woman says that if His Majesty doesn't like her, it's better for them to behave as before and keep their distance. The man has no right to call her that, and to blame her for something that is not the girl's fault. Tears are flowing from the Empress's eyes. Today she feels particularly offended by the ruler's behavior. She apologizes because the poison has not yet completely left her body and wipes her eyes with a handkerchief. The Emperor clenches his fists and says that he is not behaving this way because he hates her. Therefore, the woman need not worry. Carlos decided to watch her and the Duke separately. After all, Yvonne did not choose to be his daughter. The Empress recalls how Charles hated her to such an extent that he simply could not say simple words like, "I don't like you." The husband asks if his wife received Wolf's tears. He apologizes because he should have sent them long ago. The Lord is terribly guilty for treating the Empress in this way. At least now he wants to correct his mistakes, so he asks the woman to accept it. The girl says that everything is fine. His Majesty is relieved by these words, so he suggests that they meet like this more often. He still has work to do, so the Emperor must leave his wife now. With a terrible smile, he leaves Yvonne to enjoy her meal. Seeing the Emperor's smile, the woman realizes that he has not changed at all. She clenches her fists and wonders why she keeps falling into the same trap every time. His Majesty summons the best doctors and says that they must know why he feels so sick inside for no reason. The healer asks the butler what happened. Gorton tells him that Carlos has returned from a very unpleasant dinner. The doctor assumes that the Emperor has a sick stomach and gives him some medicine to drink. Carl snatches the jar from his hands and drinks it in one gulp. The Lord says that the man can go home because he has already felt better. Leaving the chamber, the doctor advises His Majesty to get more rest and not to overexert himself at work. However, he shouldn't get carried away with the medicine either. When the doctor leaves, the butler asks if his master is really all right. The man denies it but refuses to go to the doctors again because it's not that serious. The Emperor is confused by the incredible resemblance between Delois's daughter and his old friend Lou. He decides that it is indeed time to rest because such hallucinations are abnormal. Carlos asks if Asher hasn't said anything yet. Gorton says that the last letter from him came a month ago. The messenger will soon return with Bernie to Coronation. The servant does not understand why his master is so interested in Bernie. In fact, Asher has one special task. After drinking the medicine once again, Carl thinks that he shouldn't expect anything, because his dreams may be shattered again. On Sunday, the Duke visits the Empress's palace. He already knows that the Emperor has invited her to dinner. Hans doesn't know how the man feels about her, but he tries to reveal it at every opportunity. Yvonne already knows that her father and the Emperor are at war again. Carlos has even invited the Marquis Rodin to his house, flirting with him as a father-in-law. The woman guesses that the maids were talking about this, because they had recently told everyone about her dinner with the Emperor and Kiana's life. The Duke is furious that Rodin is the center of attention. He was a nobody, and now he has decided to turn against him. The Emperor had lunch with the Marquis only once, but in a day he would stop noticing him again. And his new attitude toward his daughter is just a myth. For it was the Emperor who appointed the coronation of the second Empress on such a day. Yvonne realizes that if Delois finds out that she set the date, he will probably want to kill her. He already believes that the Duchess and daughter died through the heroine's fault. The man asks if Yvonne is spying on the second Empress. The girl rarely sees her, so she can't say for sure. Kiana spends a lot of time with His Majesty. The Duke orders his daughter to make the woman crawl to her on her knees and show her the real name of Delois. However, if the Empress hurts Lady Rodin, Carlos will not forgive her. So she doesn't even know what to do. Be that as it may, the Lord has sworn to treat the Count's daughter as an Empress. So they will use all available methods. Ivan vows to stay close to His Majesty by any means necessary. When Hans is about to leave, the girl asks him to give her mother a letter. If the heroine doesn't write for a long time, Denise will get very worried. Glancing at his daughter, the man snatches the paper from her hands. When Yvonne finds the second empress's weakness, her husband will tell her. Mariel says that they want to remove the status of the second empress. This is due to political goals. Nobles who are loyal to the Duke strongly oppose this title. For a long time now, only the name has remained of the Order of the Second Wife, but everything is legal, so such a minor incident is possible. For this reason, they also want to ban extramarital affairs, and if they succeed, it will not be easy for Kiana. The woman realizes that the Duke wants to find Kiana's weakness and attack her along with Marquis Rodin. And then, having abolished the title of the second empress, he wants to stop the emergence of others. The empress knows that the Marquis is very much a pain in Deloise's eyes. Marielle takes her mistress's hands away from her head because she might ruin her hair. Today the empress must look perfect. The last time the maid was very surprised to see His Highness dressed up like this to meet her. Yvonne doesn't see the difference, because her husband still sits every dinner as if he had eaten flies. Marielle is convinced that His Highness always has this expression on his face. Deloise doesn't believe it, because he clearly sees the difference between reactions to himself and to others. But still, this time the Emperor called his wife to the garden, which is very romantic. Carloy doesn't know much about her, but he has definitely learned how much the woman loves flowers. Yvonne denies that she does not like the garden. However, the maid has seen her mistress go there several times. The heroine makes an excuse that she just gets stuffy. Marielle doesn't respond to this, and they leave. The girl recalls the Duke's words about being as close to the Emperor as possible as she walks down the stairs. At the mention of his wife, Carloy slams his fist on the table, which is startling to hear. The butler wonders if the Empress hates him that much. The man, drinking his medicine, says that he simply cannot help but like her. Gorton thinks that his master has chosen a too romantic place for a date. Finally, Her Majesty appears, and Carl cannot take his eyes off the woman. Smiling, the man advises her to sit down. Last time, he was not respectful enough to her, so he tried to organize this meeting in the best possible way. Yvonne agrees and thinks she has something else to say. Her Majesty also did not show her best last time and was worried about it. The Emperor compliments his wife on her necklace, as it looks incredible on her. However, the girl does not understand why the Emperor is looking at her like that. The Emperor explains that he had heard that his wife loved this garden, so he chose this place. He wonders if dining outdoors doesn't cause her any inconvenience. In fact, the heroine does not know why she comes here so often. This is an answer that Yvonne will never know, as a person who is always walking in search of hope. But still, she wants to be in the king's garden and admire the flowers. The Empress admits that she really loves this place. Seeing his wife's reaction, the husband is glad that she likes it and quickly turns away. Yvonne asks if the Emperor doesn't like the flowers. The man says that they are just plants, and when he looks at them, he begins to remember the promise he was able to keep. The girl suspects that he is referring to the same vow he made when she was a child. Yvonne wants to say something, but her voice disappears. It's the sorcerer's magic, controlling the leakage of information. And she didn't even try to say Lylan Lu's name. Now the heroine can't say a single word. She asks who that person was. The Emperor would call that person frivolous. The Empress thinks she is insignificant if she tries to hear even such a trifle. The Lord recalls that the day of the White Wolf's memory, the one who created this world, is approaching, and the day when festivals are held in all countries of the continent. Crocine also organizes celebrations in the palace, but last year, Yvonne was not allowed to participate. Although it is customary to entrust the organization of all receptions in the palace to the Empress, the heroine doesn't understand why her husband has suddenly started talking about this. The woman says that soon everyone will be very busy. That is why the Lord started talking about the holiday. It would be best if the rightful Empress prepares the celebration. In fact, there is not much time, so Yvonne could do it with Kiana's help. It becomes clear to the surprised girl that she was only asked for the sake of formality. The man has already let Lady Rodin know that everything will be fine. For the girl, this is just another incomprehensible phrase. From a cultural point of view, it should have been her who spoke about this. The emperor still has business to attend to, so the man has to leave again. Seeing his wife's distant look, Carloy grinds his teeth. Sitting in his study, the emperor thinks that Yvonne has lost even more weight since their first meeting. For some reason, her eyes are very similar to Lillian's. This is confusing. The servants are already discussing the news about who will be preparing for the White Wolf Festival. They have also noticed that His Majesty is behaving differently than last year. Now no one knows what's in his head. Marielle feeds the birds on the window with breadcrumbs and asks the landlady what the letter she received says. The Duke writes that he suspects the Emperor. He is using his daughter to free the second Empress. On the other hand, he is watching Yvonne and looking for weaknesses. The woman can't read the last paragraph aloud and blushes profusely. Marielle picks up the paper and sees that the Duke wants her to share a bed with Carloy. The girl takes the letter from her hands because she is very shy. Yvonne throws the paper into the fireplace. The prince completely rejected her 6 months ago. This idea seems ridiculous to the heroine. However, she cannot disobey the Duke's order. The Empress asks Marielle how His Majesty has been behaving since their last meeting. The maidservant replies embarrassedly that he is as usual. He seems to be eating again in the company of the second Empress. The heroine can't fathom the idea that Carloy could be in love with someone. Marielle suggests that the hostess invite her husband to dinner herself because there is no guarantee that the Lord will seek to meet her again. In fact, this is better than just waiting for the weather to clear. The Empress, clutching her masonry, realizes that Marielle is right. They have only had lunch twice. If the heroine does not take the initiative, no one may remember her for a year. However, if this continues, she will not see her mother for the rest of her life. Yvonne just needs to pretend to obey the Duke's orders, so she asks Marielle to bring her everything she needs to write a letter. The butler delivers a message from the Empress's palace to His Highness. The husband sees that his wife wants to have tea together, although she has never offered it before. Yvonne's handwriting is as beautiful and clean as the Emperor's. Exhaling a heavy breath, Charles tells Gorton about Her Majesty's proposal and says that he will leave after lunch. The Lord is alarmed by this invitation. After all, this could be some new evil plan on the part of Delois. At the meeting, Yvonne says that she wanted to treat her husband to a delicious foreign tea and asks him about the taste. Carloy still does not understand her intentions. The girl invites the Emperor to visit her bedroom once. At these words, Charles suddenly chokes on his tea and starts coughing. Servants and the Empress immediately fly to him. The man calms them down and asks his wife to sit down and repeat herself. Hearing everything again, His Majesty freezes. Clutching the towel on the table, the Emperor realizes what Yvonne's goal was. He knew that sooner or later he would have to do this to win the heroine over to his side, but he didn't think it would be so soon. Besides, the girl asks him about it with such a doomed look on her face. Obviously, this is the work of the Duke of Delois to test Carloy. Her Majesty, after sitting for a while, says that if the Emperor doesn't like it, they don't have to do it. Her husband's words of consent frighten the Empress. He says he will come to her tonight. If the Duke has decided to test him, he must first give in. Carloy notes that his wife is no actress. Carl says that if the Empress doesn't like it, he won't come. But the girl awkwardly objects, because today is a perfect day. The couple continues to drink tea and exchange pleasantries. Marielle whispers to the butler that his master has not touched the food at all. Perhaps she chose the wrong dessert, but her husband denies it. The Emperor is not at all picky about his food. However, he only took a bite of the cake. The woman attacks Gorton because the atmosphere is not normal. It seems as if Carloy loses his appetite when he looks at Yvonne. He must have a favorite food. The butler gave in to the woman's pressure and told her in her ear the Emperor's wishes. Marielle looked very surprised. She thinks that Gorton said this to mock Her Majesty again. Yvonne hears the servants whispering loudly and asks Marielle what happened. The woman explains that she just wanted to ask them to bring some more bread to the table. The Empress does not understand why, because the table is full of pastries. Marielle calls the bread corda. The heroine is about to say that she cannot offer such food to the Emperor, but stops when she sees his reaction. The man blushes and starts to scold Gorton. The Empress says that it would be strange to eat bread here, but she does not mind. When the maid brings the bread, Yvonne orders it to be jammed under Carloy's scrutiny. The lady tells him that the Pinot flower grows in Delouis. so she is used to it. His Majesty admits that he was surprised that an aristocrat from a noble family likes such food. The other nobles turn up their noses at the sight of bread for the common people. After all, there are much tastier dishes in the world. Ivan asks if she is not like the emperor. After all, he also left his title behind and calmly eats the korda, not looking at the others. When Karloy looks at his wife, he thinks that her face is the same as before. She is the one who tried to dissuade the boy from resisting the Duke of Delois, not listening to the young man's words. These memories make the emperor feel suffocated. When the emperor is changing his clothes, the butler asks if he is taking too much medicine. Perhaps it is better to see a doctor, but Karloy objects. If the servant continues to talk nonsense, he should leave. Gorton wonders if it would be better to move the empress to her rightful quarters in the main building rather than go to her bedroom. The man is shocked by this suggestion and refuses. It is better not to see the duke's satisfied expression, but he can't leave these rooms empty until someone moves in. The butler exhales heavily. The Imperial Chambers, which only the emperor and empress have the right to use, are the place where His Majesty's mother, poisoned by Hans Delois, made her last sound. The emperor does not want to be there more than anything. Gorton tries to dissuade his master from going to Yvonne by any means, worried that this woman might do something to Charles on his father's orders. The butler begs the emperor not to turn a blind eye. Karloy says that he will definitely not be able to sleep, so Gorton should not worry. When His Majesty leaves the chamber, Yvonne is still getting ready. Marielle tries to calm her down because nothing terrible can happen. This is not some strange place, but the heroine's personal bedroom. The Empress orders her to stop preparing her for bed. The maid realizes that her mistress wants to send her away because she feels out of place. On second thought, Yvonne shouts out that His Majesty may not be in his right mind right now. Marielle is laughing at this. The maid says that if something happens, the mistress should just call. She'll come running in a flash and kick Carla's ass. The woman is not afraid if she does not get away with it, because the Emperor does not know her weakness. The Empress is still not sure. Marielle kneels down in front of her and takes her hand. The maid is convinced that everything will be fine because the Emperor said he would treat her with respect and keep his word. For the whole year, Karloy has never come, but today he spoke and did not stop talking. Yvonne agrees, but she still doesn't understand why Karl is mentioning Lillian Liu. It would be better for him to forget. Then she would forget too and be able to endure this torture. The servants announce the arrival of the Emperor. One way or another, Karloy Kpoitan has always been a man who gets on people's nerves. When the couple is alone, they both feel uncomfortable. Come to think of it, this is the second time Karl has been here since the incident. And yet he doesn't know why the Empress had a tantrum. A woman sees her husband's depressed state and asks if he is okay. He confirms that he is, but a minute later he twists from the pain in his stomach. A butler comes into the room and asks what happened to his master. He screams and looks at the Empress like a wolf. Now Yvonne sees how other people look at her. A true daughter of her father. An Empress who can destroy the Emperor at any time. Probably, Charles thinks so too. The heroine orders to call the Imperial doctor, and in no case to say anything to Marlin. The man who arrives immediately asks if His Highness had any stomach problems. The medicines he left behind are very painful if taken on a healthy body. The butler is outraged because the healer left such dangerous medicine for his master. The Emperor orders them both to shut their mouths. The doctor asks if anything has been troubling or disturbing Carla lately. When something like this happens, there is a feeling of pain in the chest. It is not necessary to take medication, but to solve the problem. Yvonne knows perfectly well what is bothering the ruler so much. The Emperor gets up and orders her to leave after giving him a painkiller. Gorton wants to object, but Karloy says that he has already said a lot of rude things today. The man realizes his mistake and quickly bows before Yvonne. He dared to insult Her Majesty and must be severely punished. The Empress explains that if she had wanted to poison Charles, she would have done so long ago. In any case, he was just doing his job. Having driven everyone away, the Lord says that he is very sorry. The woman notes that her husband will feel uncomfortable all night, so medicine alone will not help. Painkillers will help physically, but not mentally. Karl understands what she is getting at and makes excuses that it's all because of work. He will feel better after a few days of rest. Having said that, he sits down on the bed. His Majesty swears that he will not interfere with the Empress so she can lie down in peace. Ivan knows that he did not come here of his own free will, but because of the Duke. Carloy tries to pretend that he likes Della's daughter at least a little. The girl asks if they can leave one lamp on because she can't sleep in the dark. Carl is frightened by the sound of their voices in the spacious room and agrees. The woman lies with her back to her husband, and he notices that his wife has already fallen asleep. Turning over to the other side, Carlos also tries to fall asleep, but 2 hours pass and nothing happens. His Majesty thinks that if he continues to lie in the same position, his whole body will be numb. Suddenly, Ivan gets out of bed. When the Emperor does not hear the door knock, he realizes that she has left through the inner passage. Although he had been in this place only once as a child, he remembers well where the hidden exits lead. He wonders why Delois went there at such a late hour. Carl gets up and picks up the lamp. He follows his wife and enters a small garden that one of the previous emperors had built for the beloved Empress. A place where the Empress could admire the flowers all the time, even at night, and a place where he and the Empress could whisper sweet words. And in this moonlit garden, his Ivan was now sitting. The Lord rubs his eyes, because it seems to him again that instead of Delois, Lou is sitting here. He approaches his wife and asks her why she is awake and sitting here so late. At night, the wind becomes quite cool. The woman explodes and asks if Carlois is going to return to his palace. He explains that he just heard her wake up and decided to check. The Empress thought His Majesty was already asleep, but Charles could not sleep either. Ivan assumes that it is because she is with him, but her husband denies it. It is only because his bed is not there. An awkward silence falls between the couple. Listening to the garden, the Emperor asks if Ivan doesn't get bored looking at the flowers for a long time, even if it is very boring. The flowers just help her get through it all. They bloom and die, which means that life does not stand still. The girl is waiting for how they will change next time. Now the heroine often wonders why Carl spent so much time in the garden. She can't even ask what he went through, so she just says that the flowers help. Ivan explains that they make it easier to forget unnecessary thoughts. The Emperor asks what she is trying to forget if she spends so much time in the garden. The woman is surprised that he asks her anything, because he will forget it immediately. She says that she is probably trying to understand why her husband has suddenly begun to show her tenderness. Carl nervously turns away and explains that he does not hate the Empress at all. After a little thought, the man confirms that no matter how hard he tries, he cannot love his wife. He does not know whether the Empress will consider what he has said to be an injustice, but nothing will change from Charles's will. Ivan says that she knows this very well, and that the king could have said nothing. Carloy recalls that she said the same words on their wedding night, with the same expression on her face. The man knows it's not the Empress's fault, but he can't help but feel at least a little bit of affection for her. Her Majesty says that she already knows everything. There is no need to explain every word. If you look at it that way, it is Ivan who dislikes the Emperor, not the other way around. The woman denies it, and Carloy is glad that it is not so. The man calls her to go back. The girl says that she will sit here a little longer. Carl says that he can go to his palace immediately if Delois is uncomfortable. Rising, the woman follows him into the chambers. On the way, Carlyle asks why his wife allows him to approach her if she is uncomfortable. In fact, the girl is just embarrassed. Stopping, the Emperor asks if the Duke is a good father. Ivan trembles at this question, and instinctively covering the scar on her arm, says that he is exactly like everyone else. This answer seems incredibly dry to Carla, and he thinks that Delois is only pretending to have a good relationship with his daughter. They have a pleasant conversation, and Carl will try to visit more often. In the morning, the maids discuss the fact that the Emperor spent the night with the Empress, and before that he beat his chest because he hated the Duke. Now, everyone who supported Rodin has become a laughingstock. The Marquis tells Carla that all the aristocrats who had been neutral have taken the Duke's side. Not one or two of their trade deals have failed. It seems that Delois immediately spread the necessary gossip. Rodin asks why the Emperor is doing this. He was supposed to take advantage of Ivan, but he was taken advantage of. Kiana asks her father to stop, because weak people always change sides whenever possible. The Marquis shouts that his daughter is in the most dangerous position now. Carloy orders him to be quiet, because there are ears everywhere. The Marquis sees no point in getting closer to the Empress. Karl says that he and the Duke are standing on a powder keg because one wrong step and a civil war will begin. To avoid this, there must be a good reason for the nobility not to join in, and Ivan becomes the key figure here, at least for now. The Marquis asks if the Emperor is sure that Delois will help them. The man does not see the point in certainty. The main thing is to persuade the Empress to their side. For now, the Duke will not touch the second Empress, so the Marquis can stop worrying and just observe the mood of the nobles. The man obeys the order and leaves. Kiana says that, given her father's weak character, it is understandable why the nobility chooses the Duke. It was not the Ansons who should have been demoted to counts, but them, the Rodens. Even before the foundation of the Croissant Empire, it was ruled by 5 great dynasties: Delois, Croiton, Anson, Rodin, and Dunya. Although the Anson family was extended to the counts, the name of their ancestors is still remembered today. Nowadays, Anson and Delois have shaken hands, and Croiton and Rodin have entered into an alliance. Only the Dunya remained. It is obvious to the Emperor that the Marquis Rodin alone is not enough. One day, neutral aristocrats will have to choose sides, and then the Duke will not hesitate to use force. Kiana believes that, fortunately, the Marquis of Marcia is located close to the Delois lands. As long as the Margrave maintains her authority, even Delois will not be able to move his army. The Emperor believes that the woman could easily take his side. Lady Rodin has heard that the Margrave is an intelligent woman, so she definitely does not have to join the Duke. His Majesty recalls how he ran to the Margrave as a child after the kidnapping and told her about Delois' terrible actions. Louise Lutyens then thought that the Croiton Empire had fallen. The boy became angry and yelled at her. However, the Margrave only told the truth. She explained that if the prince wanted to survive, he had to clearly understand the situation. In this case, coming to her was the right decision. But, as Carla knows, she cannot leave her domain. Therefore, her people will safely bring the prince to the capital. The Emperor believes that the Margrave is the most important person in protecting the border from attackers. She will not waste people on the conflicts of the lords. Kiana assumes that her husband wants to return Countess Dunya. Her father insisted on this, but they say that no one has seen her for more than 10 years. Some people are convinced that the Countess has gone mad, while others believe that she committed suicide. However, Kiana is more inclined to the second option. Exhaling, Charles says that he will take care of it himself. The Emperor orders the second Empress to keep an eye on Ivan during the celebration in honor of the White Wolf, and to find the slightest trace of the situation. Keanu is surprised by his words. The woman explains that she keeps in touch with aristocrats from all over the country to find out something, but so far, no one has ever met a person who lived in that forest. Carl suggests that there should be at least a brooch. The girl thinks that the Duke got rid of it long ago because she hasn't heard anything about the jewelry. The Overlord tells her that it is an ancient magical object of the Imperial family, the existence of which the Duke simply cannot be known. It cannot be destroyed. But until they turn over all the lands of Delois, nothing can be said. Kiana asks how they are getting on with the first Empress. The man admits that she does not trust him at all. Rodin notices that he was more confident before. The girl says that she definitely has feelings, but she probably doesn't show them because the couple spends too little time together. The two of them need to communicate more, so the Emperor should pay a visit at least once a Sunday. It is best at night. The man says that Kiana knows how to behave properly during nighttime meetings. The girl's cheeks turn red, and she explains that different emotions awaken at night. The Emperor orders her to leave. The butler reports to his master that the Duke of Delois is asking for an audience. The man is surprised by this and goes to meet the guest. Hans is already waiting for him and informs him that he would like the House of Lords to open as soon as possible. Carloy himself must realize that he will not be able to resist the assembly for long, so he should not waste his energy and let others speak. By the expression on the Duke's face, it becomes obvious that he is completely confident that the second Empress will be overthrown. The man says that every time he sees Delois, a certain thought arises in his mind. It's true, he hasn't died yet. Even the devils in hell don't seem to want to accept him. The Duke worships because no one in this world can understand the Emperor better than he can. He did not even suspect that he would ever worship His Majesty like this. The men exchange evil smiles and their dialogue continues. The Duke smiles disgustedly. As a child, he was deceived by this smile and believed that Delois loved him. And of course, he considered him a replacement for his father, who died early. However, now the Emperor knows that his face is an unsurpassed mask. Since the Duke wants to open the House of Lords as soon as possible, he must give the ruler something in return. The man will get what he wants if he stops touching the rodents. Delois reminds him that the Emperor still has no right to delay the assembly for more than 30 days. His Majesty explains that he can come up with a new plan, which is why the Duke has come to see him today, because he understands this perfectly. It is a waste of time to continue this conversation, so the Emperor asks if Hans has come only for this purpose. In that case, if Karl fulfills one more condition, the Duke will leave the rodents alone. The Lord knew there was something else. A man who aspires to the throne can never have enough. It's really sad that the throne is already occupied by him. Delois says that since the Emperor spent last night at the Empress's palace, he could invite her to his place for the next night, soon. The Duke is probably referring to the Imperial Chamber where his pregnant mother was killed. Carloy asks if Hans thinks it will then be easier to attract the attention of others and prove that he has accepted the Empress and his father-in-law. The Duke just hints at how it is customary. It's a little embarrassing to have to say it directly. The Emperor accepts his condition. However, in order for the meeting of the lords to take place, the man must return to the rodents everything he has taken. As soon as the Lord spends the night in the Imperial Chambers, the Duke will do everything. When Delois is about to leave, Charles advises him not to rejoice too much. After all, it is the Duke's heart that hurts for the Empress, not the Emperor's. He hopes that Hans does not lose sight of the fact that what he values most in the world is now in the hands of Carloy. The Duke laughs at these words and says that His Majesty is naive. Delois doubts that there was anything more important in the life of the Emperor's parents than their son. Otherwise, what is the point of playing family? Karl thinks it sounds like the Empress means nothing to her husband. Hans says that there is always a chance that things can change. Carloy himself must understand why the late Emperor and Empress raised him so strictly. The child was very similar to his late grandfather, the great Emperor, a man who lost his mind in love and almost destroyed their country. His parents were very afraid that their son would repeat the fate of his grandfather. The Emperor knows this story very well, and the one who whispered the most that his grandfather had gone mad. Delois says that His Highness may think he is different, but he is not. It's just that Carloy hasn't had the opportunity to go crazy, but blood is like water. It will soon make itself felt. Karl believes that it will be better for the Duke if he remains sane, because if he goes mad, Hans will be first on the list for execution. He still does not see the result of this meaningless conversation. Delois reminds him that his blood is on the board. Whatever the Emperor wants from it, nothing will change. Carloy may not expect the Duke's child to stick to his hands, but it is to his advantage to keep her as Empress. It would be very bad if the daughter became like her father. The Emperor summons Gorton to his room and orders him to clean up the Imperial Chambers so that nothing reminds him of his mother's death. The Duke comes to his daughter and asks what she and the Lord talked about that night when he came to her, because it is clear that the man did not even touch Yvonne. Delois receives the answer that the Emperor does not hate the girl. Satisfied, he allows the heroine to see her mother. After all, the long separation from her daughter is not good for her either. However, the mother will not survive the journey to the capital, so the woman must visit her in the duchy herself. Yvonne exclaims that she will definitely go. However, there is one problem: whether the Emperor will give his permission for such a long trip. The heroine is an empress without a single descendant. The Duchy of Delois is located near the border. It is not close and it is very dangerous there, so it will be difficult to leave and arrive easily. The girl says that she may be hopeless, but if she asks nicely, she will be released. The Duke asks what reason he should give, since her official mother and Hans's wife are long dead. She wonders if Carloy will let her go on a date with a dead man. The woman understands what her husband is getting at. He wants her to ask for it. The father explains that his daughter will soon be called to the Imperial Chambers. After all, His Majesty seems to treat her warmly, so the heroine cannot miss this chance. Every day, Carloy sends his wife flowers, and there is simply no place to put them. Marielle thinks that he is trying to show himself in the best possible way before their meeting in the chambers. The Empress orders him to throw new bouquets somewhere. The girl believes that Karl does not like flowers grown with the help of magic. Someone must be choosing them instead of him. Therefore, she simply cannot enjoy gifts that are not from the heart. Yvonne knows that she is being taken advantage of. The butler tells the master that the Empress has asked him not to send any more flowers because there is simply no place to put them. The Lord praises the man for his work and allows him to leave. The Emperor thinks about Yvonne Delois, who has the Duke's blood in her. After meeting her, he will not be able to look his wife in the face. He was advised not to sit idly by and treat her like an empress, but all His Majesty could think of was to shower the woman with flowers. The man will soon go crazy, because in 3 days there is also a meeting in the Imperial Chambers. Suddenly, someone addresses the Lord. Carloy says that Asher doesn't have to come in through the window while Horton is still there. The guy says that you never know what can happen, and it's more convenient. We didn't hear from him for a long time because Asher didn't go only to burn. This spy was an orphan born to a slave. The Emperor brought him back after the war when he was 15, 385. He is the only one who knows things that even the Duke does not know. The spy says that Bern is now at peace and tranquility. The army has not been replenished, and there is not even a hint of preparation for war. This is strange because this empire is always trying to tear a piece of Croatian away. In addition, in the last war, the Emperor lost Lartua to them. The situation is so-so, but Asher says that it's calm there. This is suspicious. Carloy thinks that they are only demonstratively suppressing their military ambitions. The spy looks at the Emperor and asks if he is not interested in anything else. The Emperor says that if the boy knows what he is interested in, he would like him to tell him, and not to stall. Asher admits that the person the Emperor was looking for is not in Bern. He searched all the neighborhoods near the border, but found no trace. There was no one in Delois either. From the scene to the innocent peasants of the area, the Duke destroyed absolutely everything. Knowing him, it would have been much stranger if there had been anything left. The Emperor mentions that only a dark forest remained, but no one could get around it. Asher says it's impossible to get there. Carloy flies up from the table and asks him to explain himself. There is blood magic on the border, and only direct descendants of Delois can enter it. However, the magician does not have to be of the same blood, because the spell can be cast using the head of the house. The ruling dynasties of all the countries of the continent are descended from the ancestors of the founders, but the direct line of Croy, the first ruler of Crocine, is not Croyton, but Delois. This was the beginning of a tedious power struggle between these families. As a result, everything led to the situation in which the country is now. Asher is convinced that magical protection is not placed where there is nothing. He visited such places many times as a child. Because of the depth of the power, it is almost impossible to erase traces of life on such land. And if you can't get rid of them, then the Duke put up a defense to prevent strangers from entering. The boy thinks that the Emperor should stop looking for that person. Even if he turns the whole earth upside down, there is nothing left. Asher tries to convince the owner that this person has long since died, because everything was burned to the ground and the body was not found. Karl is sure that he managed to escape, so he must be somewhere. Asher wonders why he is so important to the Emperor, because a decade has passed and nothing has changed. However, the man's whole life has changed. The Emperor gives Asher time to rest. He should turn to Gorton if he needs anything. The spy leaves the room with a sad expression. The maids, standing next to the first Empress, discuss how hard they have to work to prepare the Imperial Chambers for the wedding night. Carloy is only doing this because Kiana told him to. The girls also suspect that this lady may also choose the flowers for the mistress. Marielle interrupts them, because today is the Empress's first visit to the Imperial Chambers. It is inconceivable that ignorant people would say such nonsense on a beautiful day. The Empress, drinking tea, says that it might not be nonsense at all. Didn't anyone know that His Majesty was now spending all his time in Kiana? Perhaps the second Empress is giving him advice for tonight. If he listens to every word she says, then Yvonne will probably have a better opinion of Lady Rodin's trip. Meanwhile, Carloy tells Kiana that there are strange rumors that he is head over heels in love with her and can't see anything. In fact, this little gossip was started by the second empress. If her husband officially spends the night in the Imperial Chambers, Yvonne's position will be strengthened. Lady Roden also needs to defend her place. Kiana believes that now is the time to get closer to the Empress. It will be the right thing for the Lord himself. Seeing Carl's distant expression, the girl suspects that something has happened. Carloy asks what the second Empress wanted to discuss with him. It's about that brooch they were talking about. The woman found a man who knows about it. This stranger worked as a jeweler in the small town of Myrsel. 14 years ago, he had moved to Maha and had only recently returned. He moved to Maha because he could not support himself financially. However, it seems to Kiana that the jeweler left the country in a hurry because of the danger. The man said that 14 years ago he bought a brooch sold by a skinny, ugly boy. It was obvious to the boy that the jewelry did not belong to him. At first, the man thought the jewelry was fake. He didn't remember the child's name, but it had only one of 2 letters. It was raining that day, and the boy used the money to buy medicine for his kidneys and the flu. At first, the jeweler resold the brooch cheaply to the first person he met, but a few days later, the Duke's people visited him and asked about the jewelry, and brought a bag of gold as a reward. After a while, he saw one of the visitors in the tractor and asked what it was. According to the Duke's knights, this child was dead. His mother was also killed, and the village was burned to the ground. And all the bodies were put in a separate pile and burned as well. After these words, the emperor's hand grips the cup so hard that it cuts his palm until it bleeds. The butler comes running, but the emperor does not allow him to touch him. He silently goes to his chambers. Gorton, wrapping his arm around his master, asks to postpone the meeting with the empress because he is not in the best condition. The man says that nothing has happened, and they can hold the meeting in peace. The servant asks why the doctor came then, and why the emperor does not attach importance to the injury. Carloy makes an excuse that the glass was too fragile. Inside, Carl cannot accept that the child who saved him has abandoned him so horribly. He does not believe that this is the end, because he has been waiting and suffering for 14 years. All this time could not have been in vain. A servant opens the door to the chamber, and the distraught man sees Yvonne standing in front of him. The woman notices his wounds and asks if he is all right. The emperor approaches the bed and sits down. He apologizes because he urgently needs to lie down. Yvonne approaches the emperor and sees that he has already fallen asleep. The man begins to toss and turn, and she thinks about calling a doctor. In his dreams, the emperor dreams of hugging his mother. The woman says that it is forbidden to do this in public, and her son still does not understand this. The mother angrily asks him where he got his idea. If the boy behaves like this, he will not be able to become a good emperor. Then the picture shifts to the son sitting by the bedside of Adelaide, who is taking her last breath and saying that it is Carloy's fault. Lou runs into the room and asks what her friend is doing. Suddenly, she drowns in a pool of blood. The boy starts shaking. The girl comes up behind him and grabs him by the neck. She blames Carl for her death, and everything goes dark as she cries out in guilt. The man flies out of bed, waking Yvonne, who is sleeping next to him. The emperor thinks she is a strange ghost and closes his eyes. The woman runs after the Lord because he has just called her old name. His Majesty stands in front of the statue and breathes heavily. Tears are pouring out of the emperor's eyes, so the heroine, calling him Carl, comes closer and hugs him. Together, the couple sits down on the floor and sheds bitter tears. The man apologizes because he shouldn't have left her. The girl realizes that she cannot help him. She doesn't understand why Carloy has not only not forgotten, but has also just remembered her name. Yvonne looks at her husband and tells him with her eyes that she is close by. The emperor wipes the tears from the heroine's cheek and asks her not to cry, because it is only his fault. Carl faints, and Lou remains sitting with him in front of the monument. Later, His Majesty wakes up in the Imperial Chambers, and a butler stands by his side. The thought of where Yvonne has gone immediately pops into his head. Gorton gives the man medicine and asks how the master is feeling. The servant tells him that the emperor fainted yesterday. He had taken too many painkillers and had been exerting himself to the point of exhaustion lately. The butler asks if the emperor will stop at least when Horton has exhausted himself with the experience. The man recalls the events of yesterday and does not understand what was a dream and what events happened in reality. The butler asks why his master cried so much yesterday. His Majesty recalls how Yvonne hugged him at the monument and blushed like cancer. He wonders if Gorton saw everything. The servant explains that his master ordered him not to follow him, but he knows everything that happens to him. The butler only saw the emperor crying from a distance, and the empress was also acting strangely. Gorton can still understand why Carl was crying, but why the woman was not. The butler tells him that Yvonne also cried crocodile tears, holding her husband's body. In reality, however, she does not look like a person who can cry at all. However, when the emperor cried, she could not hold back her tears either. Horton believes that she is just the kind of person who worries about everyone. The empress left at dawn without saying a word. The butler ordered not to talk about this incident, so Carloy doesn't have to worry. The servant will serve breakfast in a moment, so the master should wait a little longer. Ashamed, Carl realizes that it was not a dream. He doesn't realize what came over him because he just grabbed an innocent man out of the blue and started apologizing. Lou is no longer alive, so the man no longer knows how to live and what to do. In the morning, the emperor is writing important documents. Suddenly, from behind him, Asher tells him that he should rewrite them because the ink has run out. Carloy was even frightened by his sudden appearance. The boy jokes that if the emperor were at war, his head would have already fallen off his shoulders. The emperor asks why the spy came to see him at all. Asher tells him that the butler said that in the afternoon, His Majesty would go to the Empress's palace because he had received her consent to visit. The man asks why he is passing on Gorton's words, but receives no answer. It seems that the butler has instructed the spy to do something to prevent him from doing any harm. Asher wonders why his master is going to a woman. After all, people around him are talking about how much they hate each other. At this, the emperor's eyes darken. His Majesty explains that there are things that have to be done even if you don't want to. Asher asks if her husband cried in front of the Empress yesterday, and now he goes to her to ask her not to tell her about it. Carloy shouts at the boy in shame. The butler told the spy. He must have bothered Gorton so much that he couldn't stand it anymore and stabbed himself. Asher asks if he can go with his master to Yvonne's palace. He is incredibly curious and bored. The emperor is irritated by Asher's desire to see his wife. Carloy, turning away, says that this is a person whom the spy does not need to know. He must sit quietly in the Imperial Palace. The boy is surprised by the change in mood. Asher notes that his host has a strange expression on his face, and he probably doesn't hate the Empress at all. Getting up from the table, His Majesty orders him to stop asking stupid questions. When the sovereign leaves the room, he is met by a butler who asks if the rascal has already left. Carl explains that a person who has just returned has nowhere to go. Therefore, Asher will stay in his chambers for the time being. When the men get closer to the Empress's room, they hear the maids quarreling because someone broke something. Entering the room, the Emperor sees the maid sitting at Yvonne's bleeding feet. The man instantly flies to his wife and grabs her feet. He asks what is wrong with this woman. Perhaps the mockery itself is her hobby. Every time she does it, it's like a trifle. Suddenly, Carloy feels as if he is losing his mind, and nothing around him matters. Even if he goes crazy, it won't be news to anyone. Marielle brings him out of his thoughts to finish the rewind. The Empress did not think her husband would come so soon. His Majesty says that if he had come later, his wife would probably have injured herself somehow. Yvonne convinces him that it was just an accident. Looking at the heroine, the Emperor does not understand why, when she came to see him yesterday, she looked incredibly similar to Lou, because they do not look a bit alike. Carloy wants to say something about yesterday, but the Empress interrupts him. The girl says that the Lord may think that she has already forgotten everything. The Emperor realizes that his wife's expression has already changed, but he cannot forget yesterday's tears. The question of why Yvonne did this leads her to a dead end. The woman excuses herself by saying that she had a bad dream. The man blushes as he realizes what a trivial question he has asked. Carla Croyton has no business acting so foolishly. With His Majesty's permission, the girl wanted to go to the Delois estate. The Emperor asks if Yvonne has any reason for this. The heroine lies that she wants to visit her mother's grave because she does not stop coming to her in dreams, and this makes her feel bad. The father says that everything is fine, but she has to come to her by herself. The man mentions that the Delois estate is too far away. Yvonne reminds him that it will take 10 days to get there and the same amount of time to get back. It will take 20 days in total. If the wife uses the magic stone, she will be able to travel much faster and the time will be halved. The emperor asks if the duke will also go and receives a positive answer. Carloy asks to return within 2 Sundays if possible. The girl is incredibly happy to hear this and tries to smile awkwardly to thank him. His Majesty is so impressed by the heroine's smile that he even spills his tea. The butler tells him about it, and the man nervously clears his throat. In exchange for the trip, he has one condition. Yvonne must take a bodyguard with her, who will be personally selected by the Lord. He already has a suitable person. The girl instantly agrees, and the emperor thinks to himself that she is still a bit cute. Abruptly, Karl breaks off his thoughts and stands up. The Lord thinks that he has finally lost his mind. He also asks her not to tell the Duke about yesterday's incident. Her face changes at these words. The heroine explains that she does not tell her father everything. Even if he finds out something secondhand, she won't do anything about it. At least the girl weighs all the information before telling the Duke anything. Ever since Carloy's grandfather died because of Delois' deception, the Croytons have had an unspoken rule. Delois can never be trusted. That's why he will never believe Yvonne Delois, no matter what. The husband says he understands his wife. The emperor notices how the heroine wants to see him off and says that there is no need for this because she is badly injured. The woman assures him that everything is fine and thanks him for his concern. It's strange that His Highness sent so many gifts, and he should have just let her go home to get a reaction. The butler wonders if the owner will really send his wife to the estate. Karl confirms and advises Gorton to rejoice, because Asher will be away from the capital for 2 Sundays. The servant guesses that the boy is going as a guard. The butler glows with joy, and is instructed to tell the Duke of Delois to come to the Emperor's conference room today. When Carloy enters his chambers, he immediately orders the spy to get off the table, as he had repeatedly asked him to sit on the chairs. Since the boy complained of boredom, he will soon find himself back at the Deloyer estate. This time, Asher can enter the dark forest and return, because the Empress will be with him, and she is the blood they need. The boy blossoms at what he hears. The Emperor doesn't understand why he is so interested in everything that has to do with a woman. His Majesty orders him to be an attendant and keep an eye on the Duke and his wife. The spy must find out everything he can. Asher, putting his hands behind his head, says that the dead cannot be resurrected anyway. The Emperor is outraged and explains that he is not going to look for that child. The boy can go prepare for the trip. Carloy tries to stop thinking about Lou, but it's not that easy. If the girl really died at the hands of the Duke, then the Lord does not know what to do next. He has been holding on to her for all these 14 years. The Duke visits the Emperor. The man explains that he has heard that Hans is going to the estate with the Empress. In fact, Delois did not think that His Majesty would agree to this, but now Yvonne is incredibly happy and flies like a winged butterfly. The Emperor also recently heard an interesting story. 14 years ago, the Duke's soldiers bought his brooch from the jeweler Marcel. And not just any jewelry, but the Eye of Croyton. It seems strange to him, because the Duke was not aware of these events. Hans mentions that this is true, but due to poor supervision, the brooch disappeared, and he punished all the people involved. Carloy realizes that this is an absurd excuse. Delois should know better than his lord that the jewel cannot be destroyed. Karl says that it is of no use to anyone but the Croytons. Therefore, the Duke should have returned the item to its owner. According to His Majesty, it is indeed an incredible brooch. Delois wonders if, in this case, she has no way of returning it to the owner. The Emperor orders her not to talk nonsense, and that as soon as Hans returns to the estate, he must search it up and down. The Duke bows and promises that he will do so. The Lord wants to tell Asher about the jewel and go about his business. The heroine rides with her father in a motorcade. She was excited at the thought of seeing her mother in a year and didn't close her eyes all night. But she doesn't see the bodyguard sent by Carloy. Although the butler said that this man rarely shows up, he must be quietly watching them. Hans was certainly annoyed when he heard that the Emperor had sent his man with them. However, he did not seem to object in any way. Hans did not say a word against the one guard. Finally, they arrived home. The servants greeted their hosts, and the girl was running to her mother when the Duke grabbed her arm and ordered her to take her time. She has to wait in line. The heroine will be able to go down to Denise only after meeting with the magician. Her father is terribly foresighted. Suddenly, a guy appears in front of the Empress, and she asks his name, because it is clear that he is a bodyguard from Carloy. Asher follows the girl everywhere, even into her room, because according to him, danger can be everywhere. The heroine lies that she needs to change, so the guard stays outside the door. There is a spell on the woman's room, so Asher will not be able to overhear anything. The sorcerer is already standing in the middle of the room and says that the mistress has brought someone unwanted with her. While working on the heroine, the magician explains that 6 months ago it was easier to work because the lady's thoughts were as clear as a person who still lives with his mouth closed. It seems that Yvonne was going crazy because she wanted to open her heart so much. The girl doesn't have to worry because the Duke won't know about it, but it's better not to resist. It would be a pity if something broke in her head and Delois became a fool forever. Her husband says that her mother is still alive, so she shouldn't make up anything. Yvonne has read in a book that even in Birni, there are few people who can do such magic. She wonders why the sorcerer is serving the Duke, since dealing with the kingdom of Croissine is considered a serious crime. The man explains that it is easier to make money here. The girl notices a magical purple stone on his chest and recalls that the stranger was here 14 years ago. The heroine wants to know what he did for the Duke then, but the sorcerer advises her not to bother. Yvonne realizes that she let her guard down for a moment and asks, "What difference does it make if Denise is still alive?" Because Carloy continues to do stupid things, the wrong thoughts have gone through the girl's head. The woman doesn't want to do anything else and goes to her mother. The tower is located on the outskirts of the Duke's estate. There are 2 towers that the Duke does not want to reveal to the world. The first is his daughter, who rests on the top floor, and the second is Denise, who lives downstairs. The tower is built in such a way that you can neither enter nor leave it without the Duke's permission. This place is surrounded by several magical barriers, placed with the help of Deloise's blood. Standing at the foot, the girl tells the guard for the 3rd time that he cannot enter. The heroine explains that her mother is buried within these walls, so there can be nothing dangerous here. She will just go pray and come out. If Asher continues to follow her so closely, the Empress will think that he is not just here to protect her. Yvonne instantly runs up the stairs and into the room where Jane is sitting. Marielle asks her how she is doing, but the maid refuses because she is always writing to her mother. Denise hears her daughter's voice and calls her over. Lou cries with happiness and throws herself into the arms of her mother, who is lying on the bed. The heroine asks why Denise has lost so much weight, because only half of her body is left. The woman also asks what is wrong with her descendant, because the Empress is made of bones. Denise says that she should have gone to Lillian earlier despite her health. Her daughter asks her not to talk nonsense because her mother simply did not survive the trip. Lou really wants time to stop now. Asher sees that there is a window in the tower, but he can't look through it because a magic spell has been cast on the place, and it makes him distrustful. Every time he came to the Delois estate, he felt an ominous energy here. Jane goes outside and sees a guard jumping from a tree. The girl informs him that Her Majesty will stay in the tower tonight, so he can go to rest. Usher is surprised that someone would want to sleep with a dead man. Jane informs him that the body is gone, as it was cremated and turned to ashes. When the owner lived here, she often visited the tower because she adored her mother and could not forget her. Now the guard is sure that she is up to something. Carl is sleeping with little Lou and doesn't want to wake up. His life, which was condemned to end that day, continued thanks to her. The existence of the Emperor is worthless without Lillian. Suddenly, Yvonne appears in the child's place, and she climbs into the arms of the Emperor. The man wakes up from the shock and has a hard time catching his breath. His Majesty thinks that he has already left the age when boys have such dreams. It all happened because of that night in the Imperial Chambers. Perhaps Carloy really went mad because he wanted his rescuer to be alive so badly. At least, if the Emperor had not seen this image, he would not have had such dreams. The man is sure that he is deceiving himself because he cannot desire the daughter of the Duke of Deluy. For some reason, the Lord no longer sees Hans's image in the girl since that day. However, she will never be with the Emperor.